Welcome back to Wolf Heart Tales, where every story beats with the heart of the wild. Before we dive into tonight's tale, hit that like button and join our pack by subscribing. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Tonight, we bring you a story of sacrifice, ancient magic, and a love that defies destiny itself. This is the Soulweaver's Choice, and it will be told across 14 chapters. So settle in, dim the lights, and let the moon guide you into our world. Chapter 1. The Weight of Silence. Tessa Frost had learned long ago that silence in the wilderness meant death was watching. The Valewood sprawled before her like a living shadow, ancient pines stretching toward a darkening sky, their branches weaving a canopy so thick that even afternoon light struggled to penetrate. No birds sang. No creatures rustled through the undergrowth. Just silence. The kind that pressed against eardrums and made the hair on the back of her neck stand at attention. She should turn back. But turning back meant another night sleeping rough, another morning waking with frost in her silver-white hair, another day of walking toward packs that would use her healing gift and then usher her out before sunset like she carried plague. Tessa's gray eyes, the color of storm clouds before lightning, scanned the forest path ahead. Her father's voice echoed in memory. Trust your instincts, little moonbeam. The forest speaks to those who listen. Well, right now the forest was screaming at her to run. She ignored it. 22 years of life, 7 of them spent wandering alone, had taught Tessa that sometimes the dangerous path was the only path forward. The settlement she sought lay another day's journey north, beyond the Valewood. She'd heard they needed a healer, that their last one had died of old age 3 months past. Maybe, just maybe, this pack would let her stay longer than a fortnight. Hope was a dangerous thing for someone like her. Her reflection in a still pool beside the path caught her attention, silver-white hair hanging limp past her shoulders, pale skin smudged with dirt from sleeping beneath trees, and those eyes. Those damned gray eyes that marked her as different, as other, as wrong. Ghost Girl, they called her. Death's Daughter. Bad omen. Tessa had stopped correcting them years ago. Let them think about what they want. She knew the truth. She was simply a healer whose parents had been killed by rogues, a girl cursed with features that superstitious wolves feared. Her parents, Samuel and Lydia Frost, had been legendary healers in their small pack. They trained her well before the attack when she was 15, before the rogues came in the night, before her world ended in blood and fire, before her father pressed his blood-steel blade into her hands and whispered, "Live, Tessa. Live and heal others." She'd lived. But she'd never stopped running. The path narrowed, forcing Tessa deeper into the Valewood's heart. Mist began to curl around her ankles, unseasonably cold for early autumn. This forest had always been strange, sitting on the border between the mortal territories and places where old magic still breathed. The wild white wolves lived somewhere in these depths, creatures of legend that most considered myth. Tessa had seen them once, years ago, watching her from between trees with eyes too knowing for animals. They'd vanished like smoke when she'd tried to approach. The cry that shattered the silence hit her like a physical blow. A child. No, not a child. A wolf cub. The sound came again, high and terrified, followed by a yelp of pure pain that made Tessa's healing senses flare to life unbidden. She could feel it from here. The wrongness, the hurt, the fear radiating like heat from flames. Every rational thought screamed at her to keep walking. Cubs meant parents. Parents meant territorial adult wolves who would not appreciate a stranger approaching their young. And that cry, it spoke of danger, of predators, of situations that ended with more bodies on the forest floor. But Tessa's feet were already moving. She'd spent 7 years running from attachments, from involvement, from anything that might make her care enough to hurt when it was torn away. 7 years of survival, without living. The cry came a third time, weaker now. Dying. Damn it. Tessa broke into a run, her worn boots barely making sound on the leaf-strewn path. Her healing sense blazed brighter, pulling her toward the source of pain like a compass needle finding north. The forest blurred past, ancient trees, creeping mist, the last rays of sunlight filtering through leaves like liquid gold. She burst through a wall of brambles and stopped so abruptly she nearly fell. The clearing before her looked like a scene from nightmares. A wolf cub lay in the center, small and broken, its fur pure white, so white it seemed to glow even in the fading light. Blood matted the pristine coat, turning snow to crimson. One hind leg twisted at an angle that made Tessa's stomach turn. Deep gashes raked across the tiny back, still weeping red. But it was the 3 wolves surrounding the cub that turned Tessa's blood to ice. Rogues. She knew them instantly by their appearance. Mangy gray fur marred by scars, eyes that held no sanity, only hunger and malice. These weren't wolves who'd simply left their packs. These were creatures touched by something darker, twisted by shadow magic that fed on pain and violence. They were playing with the cub, letting it drag itself a few agonizing feet toward the tree line, then cutting off its escape, herding it back to the center of the clearing. The cub's terrified whimpers pierced Tessa's heart like shards of ice. This wasn't a hunt. This was torture. Before her mind could catch up with her body, Tessa heard herself shout, "Get away from it." 3 sets of eyes turned toward her. 3 mouths pulled back in snarls that showed too many teeth. One of the rogues shifted, bones cracking and reforming until a man stood where a wolf had been. He was tall and gaunt, scars crisscrossing his bare chest, eyes holding nothing human. When he smiled, it looked wrong. Too wide, too eager. Well, he rasped, his voice like stones grinding together. "The moon's blessed us twice tonight, boys. First the little prince, and now—" His gaze raked over Tessa, lingering on her white hair, pale skin, gray eyes. "Now we have a pretty little Omega who looks like a walking corpse. Tell me, ghost girl, does anyone even know you exist? Will anyone miss you when we're done?" Prince. The word hit Tessa like cold water. White fur. Being hunted by rogues who specifically wanted it dead. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. This wasn't just any cub. This was someone important. Someone whose death would shatter kingdoms. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tessa forced out, trying to keep her voice steady even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "But you need to leave that cub alone and walk away. Now." The rogue laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The other 2 shifted to human form, flanking her slowly, predators circling prey. "Or what?" the scarred leader continued. "You're going to fight us, little ghost? You don't have claws or fangs worth mentioning. You don't even have a pack. I can smell it on you. That lonely, desperate stench. You're nobody. Nothing. And nobody's going to care when we paint these trees with your blood." He was right. Tessa was nobody. She'd been nobody for 7 years, invisible and unimportant, a ghost drifting through other people's lives without leaving a mark. No one would avenge her death. No one would even know she was gone. But that cub, that tiny white wolf bleeding on the ground, was somebody. And Tessa had spent 7 years being nothing, surviving but not living, walking past suffering because getting involved meant risk. She was so tired. Tired of running. Tired of loneliness. Tired of waking up each day wondering what the point was if she never let herself care about anything. "You're right," Tessa said quietly, reaching into her worn pack. "I am nobody." Her fingers closed around the leather-wrapped hilt of her father's blood-steel blade, the only weapon she owned, the last piece of him she carried. "Which means," she continued, pulling the knife free, "I have nothing left to lose." And then she attacked. Chapter 2. Blood and Awakening. Tessa had no illusions about her chances. She wasn't a warrior. Her father had taught her basic self-defense, enough to protect herself from common threats, but these weren't common threats. These were rogues touched by shadow magic, trained killers who'd probably left a trail of bodies across the territories. But she had a surprise on her side. The scarred leader's eyes widened as Tessa lunged, clearly not expecting the ghost girl to actually fight back. She used to shock, drove her blade forward with all her strength, aiming for the throat just like her father had shown her all those years ago. Major arteries. His voice whispered in memory. "If you have to kill, make it quick." The blood-steel blade, forged in fires mixed with wolfsbane and blessed silver, slid through flesh like water. Hot blood sprayed across Tessa's face as the rogue stumbled back, hands grasping at his torn throat, eyes wide with disbelief. He collapsed, gurgling, life draining across dead leaves. No time to think. No time to process. The second rogue was already on her. He grabbed her from behind, claws erupting from his fingertips and raking across her ribs. Tessa felt skin and muscle tear, felt fire explode across her side. She screamed, couldn't help it, but used the momentum, drove her elbow backward into his face with every ounce of strength she possessed. Bone crunched. His nose shattered. His grip loosened just enough. Tessa spun, brought her knife up in a brutal arc, caught him under the chin. The blade punched through soft tissue, drove upward into his skull. She felt the moment it pierced his brain, the way his body went instantly slack, dropping like a puppet with cut strings. 2 down. The third rogue snarled, shifted back to wolf form in a blur of gray fur and malice. He was smarter than his companions, more cautious, circling her slowly, while she bled from the gashes across her ribs. Tessa could feel the damage, not just the obvious pain, but the deep wrongness her healing sense detected. 3 ribs cracked. Punctured lung. She was dying already, just slowly. The rogue lunged. Tessa tried to dodge. Too slow. Too injured. Massive jaws closed around her shoulder, teeth sinking deep, grinding against bone. The world exploded into white-hot agony. She felt bones crack like dry kindling. Felt the knife slip from fingers that had gone suddenly, terrifyingly numb. The rogue shook her like prey, back and forth, savage, meant to break her neck. Then he released, sent her flying. Tessa hit an ancient pine trunk hard enough to see stars, slid down to crumple at its roots. Through vision that wouldn't focus properly, she watched the rogue turn away from her. Watched him stalk toward the cub, who'd been trying so desperately to crawl away during the fight. No. Not after everything. Not after she'd killed 2 of them. Not after she'd finally chosen to fight for something instead of just surviving another empty day. Tessa's healing sense erupted like wildfire in her mind, cataloging her injuries with clinical detachment. 3 broken ribs, right lung collapsing, shattered shoulder, deep lacerations, massive blood loss, internal bleeding. She was dying. Minutes at best. But her gift wasn't just for sensing injuries. It was for healing them. And healing was just moving life energy, encouraging the body to repair itself. She'd been taught to be careful, to never push too hard, to never drain herself below safe levels. Her parents had never taught her what happened if you pushed past the limits. If you gave everything. Tessa reached deep inside herself, past the reservoir of energy she normally used, past every safety her parents had drilled into her, down to the very core of her life force, the spark that kept her heart beating, lungs working, blood flowing. And she pulled. Power flooded through her system like lightning in her veins, raw, primal, agonizing. This wasn't normal healing magic. This was something older, something that felt ancient and vast and terrible. Something that was tearing her apart from the inside even as it filled her with impossible strength. Soulweaver. The word appeared in her mind like a whisper from the universe itself. The forbidden gift. The lost art. The magic that hadn't awakened in 300 years. Tessa threw everything at the rogue, not to heal, but to drain. Life energy could flow both ways. She ripped the vitality from his body, watched through tear-blurred vision as he collapsed mid-step, aging decades in seconds. His fur turned gray and patchy. His muscles withered. His eyes dimmed. And then he stopped breathing entirely, nothing but a husk that had once been alive. The backlash hit Tessa like a tidal wave. Using Soulweaver magic to kill instead of heal was apparently not advised. Her body convulsed, rejecting the stolen life force, unable to process the corruption that came with taking instead of giving. Blood poured from her nose, her ears. Her vision doubled, tripled, went dark at the edges. But the cub was safe. That was what mattered. Tessa crawled across the clearing on hands and knees, every movement sending fresh waves of agony through her broken body. The white wolf cub watched her approach with wide, frightened blue eyes, eyes too knowing, too aware for an animal. Up close he was beautiful, pristine white fur marred only by drying blood, fine-boned face. Those incredible blue eyes that seemed to hold oceans. Royal bloodlines always bred true. If the rogue had called him Little Prince, this cub belonged to one of the ruling families. Maybe even the alpha sovereign himself. "Hey, sweetheart," Tessa whispered, reaching out with a shaking hand to stroke the cub's head. "It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you." The cub whined and licked her hand, the gesture so trusting it broke something in Tessa's chest. His injuries were severe. Broken leg, deep lacerations, blood loss, but not immediately fatal like hers. If she used her gift to heal him, she'd have nothing left for herself. She would die. But if she didn't heal him, he might not survive until help arrived. That leg would never set right without magic. Those wounds could become infected. And he'd lost so much blood already. Really, it wasn't even a choice. Tessa had spent 7 years as nobody, doing nothing that mattered, leaving no mark on the world. Here, now, she could save someone. Someone important. Someone who would grow up and do things she'd never lived to see. If her death had meaning, maybe her life would have meaning too. "This is going to feel strange," Tessa told the cub, placing both hands on his small body. "But it'll help. I promise." She reached for her gift again. Not to drain this time, but to give. Not from the rogues or the forest. From herself. From her own life force, the energy keeping her heart beating and lungs working. Soulweaver magic lets you transfer vitality between living things. Her parents had taught her you could only give what someone had to spare. They'd apparently never been desperate enough to test the limits. Tessa poured everything she had into the cub. She felt his broken legs straighten, bones knitting back together with soft clicks. Felt the gashes close and seal, new fur already sprouting over pink skin. Felt his strength returning, breathing the evening out, pain fading into nothing. She gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left. The world dimmed around the edges, sound fading like someone was slowly turning down the volume on reality. Her heart stuttered, missed a beat, missed another. Her breathing had stopped at some point, and she hadn't even noticed. The cub was healed. Completely, perfectly healed. He was nuzzling her face now, whining in distress, as if he understood what she'd done, what it had cost. "It's okay," Tessa slurred, her words barely audible even to her own ears. "You're going to be fine. Someone will find you. Someone important. You're too beautiful to be nobody like me." Her eyes closed. She felt herself falling but distantly, like it was happening to someone else. This was a good death, she thought. Better than dying alone and unmourned in some forgotten corner of the world. At least she'd saved someone. At least her last act had mattered. The darkness swallowed her whole. Chapter 3. The Sovereign's Desperation. Tessa didn't see the cub throw back his head and howl. The sound that tore from the small white wolf's throat was impossible, too powerful, too ancient, carrying frequencies that shouldn't exist in something so young. It rippled through the Valewood like a shockwave, bending trees, scattering mist, vibrating in the bones of every creature within miles. It was a cry for help, a summons, a command wrapped in desperation. The wild ones came first. They emerged from the depths of the Valewood slowly, cautiously, white wolves that lived where mortal and spirit realms blurred together. Larger than normal wolves, with eyes that gleamed silver in the dying light and fur that seemed to shimmer like moonlight on water. They formed a circle around the fallen woman and the cub, heads lowered in something that looked like reverence. They could sense what she was, what she'd done. The pulse of Soulweaver magic still hung in the air like ozone after lightning, marking this place as sacred. This woman had used the lost gift to save a child. That made her worth protecting. That made her holy. More wolves came, drawn by the cub's howl and the gathering of the wild ones. These were different, massive, powerful, with pristine white fur that marked them as something beyond ordinary. Royal Guard. Elite warriors of the Winterborn Dominion, trained since birth to protect their sovereign and his bloodline. And at the center of them, running faster than all the rest, came the wolf Tessa would never see. Thane Silvercrest, Alpha Sovereign of the Northern Territories, burst into the clearing and shifted to human form before his paws stopped moving. His hair was pale gold, almost white in the moonlight filtering through branches. His eyes were the same brilliant ice blue as the cub's, the color of winter skies and frozen lakes. Those eyes took in everything in a single, devastating glance. 3 dead rogues, their bodies twisted in ways that spoke of unnatural death. 1 tiny white cub, his son, his heir, his entire world, howling over a woman's body. And that woman, she lay in a pool of her own blood, so pale, she looked carved from marble. Silver-white hair spread around her head like a halo. Young faces slack with unconsciousness. Clothes shredded, revealing dozens of injuries that should have been instantly fatal. But she was breathing.
Barely.
The faintest rise and fall of her chest. The weakest flutter of a pulse in her throat. She was alive.
Just barely.
And then Thane's wolf, the primal part of him that lived beneath skin and civilization, roared to life inside his mind with an urgency he'd never felt in 30 years of existence.
Mate. Mate. Mate.
The bond hit him like being struck by lightning, powerful, undeniable, terrifying. Silver threads materialized in the air between him and the dying woman, visible only to him, shimmering with potential and promise and fate. This stranger, who'd somehow ended up in the middle of the Valewood with his son bleeding, was his true mate. His other half. The one the moon goddess had chosen for him before he was born. No, Thane whispered, dropping to his knees beside her.
No, no, no.
Not like this. His son, Cashin, his brave, precious, traumatized son, crawled into Thane's lap immediately, pawing at his father's chest, whining in distress. Thane wrapped one arm around the cub, holding him close, feeling the overwhelming relief of having him back safe and whole. But his eyes never left the woman. Thane's heart had been lodged in his throat for 3 hours, ever since the ambush on their traveling party had resulted in Cashin being taken. He tracked the rogues for miles, following his son's scent and the stench of shadow magic, praying to every deity he could name that he'd arrive in time. He'd expected to find Cashin dead or dying. Expected to have to kill the rogues himself, slowly, making them suffer for every moment of terror they'd inflicted on his child. He hadn't expected to find them already dead, killed by an Omega who looked like she'd barely survived the fight.
No.
Not survived. She was dying right now, right in front of him. Healers. Thane roared, the command echoing through the clearing with alpha authority that made every wolf present straighten.
Now.
2 of his guards shifted and ran, disappearing into the forest toward the camp they'd left behind. The others formed a defensive perimeter, watching for more rogues. The wild white wolves remained in their circle, unmoving, still as statues. Thane's hands hovered over the woman's body, afraid to touch and cause more damage. So much blood. How is she even still breathing with this much blood loss? Who are you? He whispered. What are you? Cashin whined again and nudged Thane's hand toward the woman, as if trying to make his father understand something important. That's when Thane noticed her hands. They rested on Cashin's fur, even in unconsciousness, as if she'd been petting him when she collapsed. And there was a faint shimmer around those hands, a glow that Thane recognized from ancient texts, from stories told to royal children, from legends most considered myth. Soulweaver. Thane breathed, understanding hitting him like a physical blow. You're a Soulweaver. That explained everything. Why Cashin was perfectly healthy despite the blood matting his white fur. Blood that Thane could smell was his own. Why this woman was dying despite being young and presumably strong. Why the wild white wolves had gathered. Why they stood vigil like priests before an altar. She'd used the forbidden gift. The lost magic. The art that hadn't awakened in 3 centuries. She'd saved Cashin by giving him her own life force. Had been willing to die for a cub she didn't know. For his son. His heir. His everything. And she was his mate. Though she likely didn't even know it yet. Couldn't feel the bond through the haze of pain and dying. Thane made a decision at that moment, kneeling in blood-soaked earth with his son in his arms and his dying mate at his feet. She had saved the most precious thing in his world. Had given everything to protect a child she'd never met. He would move mountains to save her in return. The healers arrived within minutes. 5 of them, the best he had, including Alara, the master healer who'd served the Silvercrest line for 60 years. Alara took one look at the woman, and her weathered face went grim. "Your Majesty," she said carefully, her voice carrying the weight of bad news. "I need to be honest about." "You will save her," Thane interrupted, and there was no room for argument in his voice. No room for anything but absolute certainty. "I don't care what it takes. I don't care if you have to work miracles. She saved my son. She's a Soulweaver." He paused, let the next words carry all the weight they deserved. "And she's my mate. You will not let her die." Silence crashed through the clearing like a physical thing. Alara's ancient eyes widened, darting between Thane and the unconscious woman. The other healers exchanged shocked glances. Even the royal guard seemed to hold their breath. Finding one's true mate was rare enough. Finding them like this, dying unknown, having just saved the crown prince, was the stuff of legends. "Your Majesty," Alara said slowly, "if she's truly a Soulweaver, and she used the gift to save Prince Cashin, then she gave more than we can easily return." But the old healer's expression shifted, determination replacing doubt. "We will not fail her. In my honor, we will bring her back." Alara dropped to her knees beside the woman, hands already glowing with healing magic. The other 4 healers joined her, forming a circle, their combined power creating a dome of golden light. "Internal bleeding first," Alara commanded. "Mira, stabilize the lung. Torin, those ribs need to be set before we can work on the surrounding tissue. Lyric, Cade, blood regeneration, now." They worked with the precision of soldiers in battle, hands moving over the woman's broken body, pouring healing magic into her with an intensity that made the air shimmer and warp. Thane watched, still holding Cashin, feeling utterly helpless for the first time since becoming sovereign. He was the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. He commanded armies, controlled resources, and could make kingdoms tremble with a word. And he couldn't do anything to save the woman fate had chosen for him. The woman who'd chosen to save his son. 20 minutes passed like 20 hours. Sweat poured down the healers' faces. Their hands trembled with exhaustion. The golden light flickered, wavered, threatened to go out. "Don't you dare stop," Thane growled when he saw Alara faltering. "You stop and she dies. Do you understand me? She dies and I will." "She's stabilizing," Mira gasped, her young face flushed with effort. "The bleeding's slowing. Her heart rate is strengthening." "The lung is sealed," Torin added, his voice tight with concentration. "Ribs are set. Moving to the shoulder now." Alara worked in silence, her hands steady despite her age, her magic flowing like water into the worst wounds. Finally, she sat back, wiping her forehead with a shaking hand. "She's stable," Alara announced, her voice rough with exhaustion. "Barely, but stable. She'll need constant care for the next week at minimum." But the old healer met Thane's eyes, and something like wonder filled her expression. "She should survive, Your Majesty. Her will to live is extraordinary. Even unconsciously, she's fighting." Relief crashed through Thane so intensely it hurt. "Get a stretcher," he commanded immediately. "We're taking her back to the palace."
Now.
"Your Majesty, moving her might." I said now. Thane's voice carried an alpha command that couldn't be disobeyed. "Every moment she spends out here is another moment for rogues to return. We move. Carefully, but we move." "And the wild ones?" one of the guards asked nervously, glancing at the white wolves still circling the clearing. Thane looked at them, truly looked, and saw ancient intelligence staring back. They weren't going to attack. They were protecting the Soulweaver. They stay if they wish, Thanes said quietly. They've honored her. We will not drive them away. Cashin shifted suddenly in Thane's arms, bones cracking and reforming until a small boy sat where a wolf cub had been. 3 years old, with pale blonde hair and his mother's ice-blue eyes. Tears streamed down his round cheeks as he clung to the woman's arm. Papa, don't let her die, Cashin sobbed, his voice cracking on words he hadn't spoken in months. She saved me. The bad men were hurting me, and she made them stop. She's nice. She's brave. Don't let her die. Thane's heart shattered and reformed in his chest. Cashin had barely spoken since Sarah's death during his birth 3 years ago, had withdrawn into silence and fear despite all of Thane's efforts. The court healers said it was trauma, that the boy would heal in time, that forcing him to speak would only make things worse. And here he was now, speaking in complete sentences, begging for the life of a stranger who'd sacrificed everything to save him. She's not going to die, Thane promised fiercely, gathering his son close. I swear it, Cashin. She's going to be okay. And when she wakes up, he looked down at the pale woman who'd changed everything in a single night. When she wakes up, you can thank her yourself. Chapter 4. Between Death and Dawn. They fashioned a stretcher from branches and cloaks, handling Tessa as carefully as if she were made of glass and moonlight. Thane carried Cashin, who absolutely refused to let go of the woman's hand. Every time someone tried to separate them, the boy would let out a wail that made the wolves' ears flatten and the healers wince. Finally, they gave up, arranging the stretcher so Cashin could walk alongside it, his small fingers wrapped around Tessa's limp ones. The procession that left the clearing looked less like a royal guard and more like a funeral march. Thane led the way, his son pressed against his side, eyes constantly darting back to make sure the healers kept pace. The 5 healers walked in formation around the stretcher, ready to stop and reinforce their magic at a moment's notice. 20 royal guards formed a protective perimeter, weapons drawn, scanning the darkening forest for threats. And the wild, white wolves followed. They stayed just beyond sight, pale shadows slipping between ancient trees, but Thane could feel them, could sense their presence like pressure against his awareness. They weren't leaving. Not until they knew the Soulweaver was safe. Your Majesty, Elara said quietly, falling into step beside him. The wild ones have never come this close to our kind before. Not in my lifetime. She awakened magic that's been dead for 3 centuries, Thane replied, his voice low so Cashin wouldn't hear. They recognize what that means. What she is. Do you understand what it means? Elara pressed. A Soulweaver, Your Majesty. The texts say they could heal the unhealable, sense wounds of spirit as well as flesh, and extend life itself. But they also say the gift comes with a price. That using it carelessly can. She used it to save my son, Thane interrupted, steel in his tone. Whatever price she pays, we will help her bear it. Elara studied his face in the dying light, reading things he hadn't said aloud. The mate bond. You're certain? I saw the threads the moment I shifted. Silver and bright as starlight. Thane's jaw tightened. She's mine, Elara. Fate chose her for me. And she was dying before she even knew I existed. The moon goddess has a twisted sense of humor, Elara murmured. Your first mate died bringing your son into the world. Your second nearly died, taking him out of death's reach. Perhaps she's trying to teach you something. Then I wish she'd use words instead of tragedy, Thane said bitterly. They walked in silence for a moment, boots crunching on fallen leaves, the forest around them growing darker as true night approached. What was she doing out here alone? Elara finally asked. A healer with no pack, wandering the Valewood by herself? That's either desperation or suicide. Thane had been wondering the same thing. He'd searched through Tessa's meager belongings while the healers worked, had found her identification papers, a healer's license, and precious little else. No pack affiliation. No family listed as living. Just a name, Tessa Frost, and a birth date that made her 22 years old. 22 and completely alone. She's been wandering since she was 15, Thane said quietly. 7 years without a home. 7 years of being nobody to anyone. Until tonight, Alara said, glancing back at the stretcher where Cashin still clung to Tessa's hand. Tonight, she became very important to two people. Thane felt the mate bond pulse in his chest, a constant reminder that his other half was steps away, broken and barely breathing. The bond wanted him to go to her, to hold her, to pour his own strength into her through sheer force of will. But he had Cashin to think about. His son who'd been kidnapped, tortured, nearly killed. His son who was currently held together by a thread and a stranger's hand. Papa? Cashin's small voice cut through Thane's thoughts. Is the pretty lady really going to be okay? Thane looked down at his son, at the fear in those ice-blue eyes, the trembling in his small shoulders. How did you promise a 3-year-old that everything would be fine when you weren't sure yourself? The healers are the best in all the territories, Thane said carefully. They're doing everything they can. But will it be enough? Cashin pressed, his voice breaking. The bad men hurt me really badly, Papa. My leg was broken and my back was bleeding and it hurt so much. And she. His voice dropped to a whisper. She touched me and the pain went away. She made me all better. But then she fell down and wouldn't wake up. Thane's throat tightened. She used very powerful magic to heal you, Cass. Magic that takes a lot of energy. She needs to rest now so she can get strong again. Like sleeping. Like sleeping, Thane agreed, even though it wasn't quite the same. And while she sleeps, we're going to take care of her the same way she took care of you. Fair. Cashin nodded slowly, then tightened his grip on Tessa's hand. I'm going to stay with her. So she's not alone when she wakes up. Being alone is scary. Something in Thane's chest cracked at those words. Cashin knew about being alone. Ever since Sarah died, even surrounded by guards and servants and tutors, Cashin had been alone in the ways that mattered. Thane had tried, Moon knew he'd tried, to be both parents, but grief and duty pulled him in too many directions. His son had been drowning in loneliness. And somehow, this unconscious stranger had already become Cashin's lifeline. Then you can stay with her, Thane said softly. We'll set up a room for you right next to hers. Deal?
Deal.
They traveled through the night, stopping every hour so the healers could check Tessa's condition and reinforce their work. Each time, Alara would look up with the same grim expression and say, still stable, still fighting, still alive but barely. Thane tried not to think about what would happen if she didn't make it. Tried not to imagine explaining to Cashin that the brave woman who'd saved him was gone. Tried not to think about the mate bond withering before it ever had a chance to bloom. The silver threads connecting him to Tessa pulsed weakly in his awareness, fragile as spiderweb in morning dew. Dawn was breaking over the mountains when the palace finally came into view. The Winterborn Dominion's seat of power had been carved from the mountain itself centuries ago. Massive stone towers rising against the sky, walls thick enough to withstand sieges, windows glowing with warm light. Home to over 3,000 wolves, from the highest nobles to the lowest servants. Home. Thane had left yesterday morning with a traveling party of 30, planning to visit the eastern border packs. He'd taken Cashin because the boy needed to see his future kingdom, needed to understand the weight of the crown he'd someday wear. The rogues had ambushed them at midday, shadow-touched creatures that shouldn't have known their route, shouldn't have been able to penetrate their defenses. Someone had betrayed them. Someone had wanted Cashin dead. Thane would find out who, and when he did. But that was a problem for later. Right now, all that mattered was getting Tessa somewhere safe. Guards at the palace gates snapped to attention as Thane approached, then froze when they saw the stretcher, the healers, the blood. Your Majesty, is the prince. Prince Cashin is unharmed, Thane announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Thanks to this woman, who fought 3 shadow-touched rogues to save him. She is to be given every courtesy, every resource. Anyone who fails to treat her with the respect she deserves will answer to me personally. Am I clear? Yes, Your Majesty. The palace erupted into controlled chaos. Servants rushed to prepare rooms. More healers came running. Guards spread out to secure the perimeter. And through it all, Thane kept moving, keeping one hand on Cashin's shoulder and his eyes on the stretcher carrying his unconscious mate. The royal wing, Thane commanded as they entered the palace proper, climbing the grand staircase that led to the private family quarters. The suite next to mine. I want her where I can reach her in seconds. Your Majesty, perhaps the healing ward would be more appropriate. One of the junior healers began. The royal wing, Thane repeated, ice in his tone. She saved the crown prince. She is my mate. She stays where I can protect her. No one argued after that. The suite they prepared for Tessa was beautiful, all soft fabrics and warm colors, a massive bed with silk sheets, windows overlooking the mountain forests. They laid her in the center of the bed carefully, arranging pillows to support her healing body. She looked impossibly small against all that luxury. A ghost girl in a palace, silver hair spread across expensive pillows, pale skin stark against burgundy silk. Alara set up a rotation of healers to watch her around the clock. Someone will be with her at all times, Your Majesty. We'll monitor her recovery, adjust treatment as needed. But I must warn you, the next week is critical. She could still take a turn for the worse. Then make sure she doesn't, Thane said quietly. Cashin refused to leave. When servants tried to take him to his own room to bathe and rest, he clung to Tessa's bed and screamed until Thane relented. They set up a small cot right beside her, close enough that Cashin could hold her hand even while sleeping. The boy finally drifted off near midday, exhausted from fear and trauma and relief, his small fingers still wrapped around Tessa's. Thane stood in the doorway, watching them, his son and his mate, both broken in different ways, both survivors of impossible odds. She's going to wake up, he said softly, to himself or to them or to the moon goddess herself. She's going to wake up, and I'm going to give her everything. A home, a family, a life worth living. The mate bond pulsed weakly in his chest, barely there but not gone. Not yet. Thane settled into a chair by the window where he could see both of them and began his vigil. She had saved his son. Now he would save her, even if it took everything he had. Chapter 5. The Long Sleep. Time moved strangely in the days that followed. For Tessa, trapped in darkness, there was no sense of hours or days passing. Only fragments, distant voices, the feeling of magic washing over her like warm water, small hands gripping hers with desperate strength, and pain. Always pain, though it was fading slowly, like winter giving way to reluctant spring. For Thane, each day was an eternity. He ruled his kingdom from Tessa's bedside, signing documents while healers worked over her unconscious form, holding council meetings in the adjacent sitting room where he could hear if anything changed. His advisors thought he was being irrational. His guards thought he was being protective. Only Alara understood the truth. The mate bond was already taking hold, even without Tessa's awareness. Every hour she remained unconscious, Thane felt the pull growing stronger. The desperate need to be near her, to protect her, to somehow pour his own life force into her if it would help. It's not healthy, Your Majesty, Alara said on the third day, finding him slumped at his chair at dawn, clearly having not slept. You need rest. You need to eat. You're no good to her dead from exhaustion. I'm fine, Thane said automatically. You're not. Alara's tone was sharp enough to cut. The bond is affecting you more than you realize. Your wolf is restless, your judgment is compromised, and you haven't left this room for more than an hour in 3 days. She's alone, Thane said quietly. She's been alone for 7 years, Alara. I won't let her be alone now. She has Cashin. Alara gestured to the small cot where the boy was currently curled up, one hand still clutching Tessa's, even in sleep. Your son hasn't left her side except to use the bathroom. He talks to her constantly about his toys, his lessons, what he had for breakfast. He tells her stories he doesn't even remember properly. He's convinced she can hear him. Maybe she can, Thane murmured. Maybe. Alara studied him with ancient, knowing eyes. But Cashin needs his father, too. He was kidnapped, tortured. He watched this woman nearly die saving him. He's processing trauma, Your Majesty, and he needs you present. Not just physically here, but mentally present. The words hit Thane like cold water. He looked at his son properly for the first time in days. Cashin's small face was pale, dark circles under his eyes despite sleeping. His fingers were white-knuckled around Tessa's hand, as if he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. When had Thane last held him? Really held him, not just a distracted pat on the head while staring at Tessa's unconscious face? You're right, Thane admitted roughly. I don't know what I've been. Terrified, Ilara supplied. You're terrified of losing another mate before you even get to know her. After Sarah. She trailed off, but they both knew what she meant. Sarah Winterborn had been Thane's first mate, a political match arranged between kingdoms, not fated but functional. They'd been friends more than lovers, and when she died giving birth to Cashin, Thane had grieved her loss but not felt like he'd lost part of his soul. This was different. Tessa was his true mate, chosen by fate itself. Losing her would be like losing half of himself, a wound that would never fully heal. She's stable, Ilara said gently. Getting stronger every day. Her body is healing remarkably well, considering what she went through. At this rate, she could wake within the week. Could, Thane echoed. Or she could not wake at all. Or she could not, Ilara agreed, because she'd never been one to offer false comfort. But that's not the outcome we're working toward. And brooding won't change it either way. Thane knew she was right. Didn't make it easier. Go, Ilara commanded, in the same tone she'd used when he was a child and had scraped his knee. Bathe. Eat a proper meal. Spend time with your son. I'll stay with her, and I swear on my life I'll send for you the instant anything changes. Ilara. Go, Thane. The use of his name rather than his title made it personal. Trust me. Trust the healers. We won't fail her. Reluctantly, Thane stood. His body protested, muscles stiff from days in the same chair, head aching from lack of sleep. The mate bond pulled at him as he moved toward the door, a physical sensation like walking against a strong current. He paused in the doorway, looking back at Tessa. In the morning light streaming through the windows, she looked ethereal, like something not quite of this world. Silver hair spread across pillows, pale skin that seemed to glow slightly, features too delicate and perfect to be real. Fight, he said quietly. Whatever darkness you're trapped in, fight your way back. We're waiting for you. The only response was the steady rise and fall of her chest. Thane forced himself to leave. Cashin woke an hour later to find his father sitting beside the cot, waiting patiently. Papa? The boy's voice was small, uncertain. Did something happen? Is she? She's fine, Thane assured him quickly. Still sleeping, but fine. I wanted to talk to you, Cass. Just us. Cashin sat up slowly, his ice blue eyes, so like Thane's own, searching his father's face. About what? About what happened, Thane said carefully. About the bad men who took you. About how scared you must have been. Cashin's face crumpled immediately. Tears welled up and spilled over, tracking down his round cheeks. I was really scared, Papa. They grabbed me when you were talking to the Border Alpha, and they ran so fast I couldn't even scream. And then his voice broke. They hurt me. They said mean things about you and about me, and they hurt me on purpose because they wanted to. Thane pulled his son into his arms, holding him tight, while Cashin sobbed into his shoulder. I'm so sorry, Cass. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry they hurt you. But she saved me, Cashin said, pulling back to look at Tessa's sleeping form. The pretty lady with the moon hair. She fought them even though she was little like me, and she made them stop. She put her hands on me, and all the hurt went away. He touched his own chest. But also the hurt in here. The sad hurt. She made that better too, somehow. Thane's breath caught. The texts about Soulweavers mentioned that the ability to heal more than just physical wounds. To sense and soothe emotional trauma, to mend hearts as well as bones. Had Tessa done that for Cashin, even while dying herself? She's special, Thane said quietly. Very special. And brave. And kind. Is she going to be my new mama? Cashin asked, with the blunt directness only children possessed. Thane hesitated. How did you explain mate bonds to a 3-year-old? How did you make him understand that yes, fate had chosen this woman to be Thane's mate, but that didn't automatically make her Cashin's mother? She's my mate, Thane said slowly. That means the moon goddess chose her to be with me. But whether she becomes your mama, that's something she'd have to choose. When she wakes up, we'll get to know her, and she'll get to know us, and we'll see what happens. Okay. I want her to be my mama, Cashin said firmly. She's nice and brave, and she smells like flowers and snow. And she holds my hand even when she's sleeping, see? He held up their joined hands as proof. Thane's heart clenched. I know, Cass. I want that too. But we have to let her choose.
Why?
Doesn't fate mean you have to be together? Fate means we're meant to be together, Thane corrected gently. But people always have choices. Your mama, your birth mama, she and I chose each other even though we weren't fated mates. And this lady, when she wakes up, she gets to choose whether she wants to accept the mate bond or not. We can't force her. Cashin frowned, processing this. But why wouldn't she want to? We're nice. And she already saved me, so she must like me. She saved you because you needed saving, and she's a good person, Thane explained. But that doesn't mean she's ready to be part of a family. She's been alone a long time, Cass. We have to be patient with her. Okay, Cashin said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. But I'm still going to hold her hand. So she knows someone wants her here. That's perfect, Thane said, his voice rough with emotion. They sat together for a while, father and son, watching over the unconscious woman who'd saved one of them and changed both their lives forever. The days continued to pass with agonizing slowness. Day 4. Tessa's color improved slightly. The deathly pallor faded to something closer to living flesh. Alara declared it progress. Day 5. She moved for the first time, just a twitch of her fingers, barely noticeable. But Cashin felt it and spent the next hour telling her excitedly that she was getting better. Day 6. Her breathing deepened, evened out. The healers reduced the amount of magic they were pouring into her, letting her body take over more of the work. Thane spent time with Cashin during the days now, taking him to the training yards, reading him stories, being present in ways he'd failed to be these past months. But every night, he returned to sit vigil by Tessa's bedside, watching her sleep, wondering what she'd be like awake.
What would her voice sound like?
Would her gray eyes be as striking conscious as they were behind closed lids? Would she smile, or had 7 years of hardship stolen that from her? Would she accept him, or would she run the moment she was strong enough? The questions haunted him. On the 6th night, as Thane sat in his usual chair with moonlight streaming through the windows, something changed. Tessa's eyes moved behind closed lids. It was subtle, just the faintest flutter, like she was dreaming. But it was the most movement she'd shown since they'd brought her here. Tessa? Thane said softly, leaning forward. Can you hear me? Her brow furrowed slightly. You're safe, he continued, keeping his voice low and soothing. You're in the palace. Cashin, the cub you saved, he's here. He's safe because of you. Everyone's safe. Was he imagining it, or did some of the tension ease from her face? When you're ready to wake up, Thane said, we'll be here. All of us. Waiting for you. Her hand twitched, the one Cashin wasn't holding. Without thinking, Thane reached out and took it on his own. Her skin was cool, soft, her hand so much smaller than his. The moment they touched, the mate bond flared to life in his chest, silver threads growing brighter, stronger. She was still there, still fighting her way back. That's it, Thane whispered. Fight. Come back to us. Tessa's fingers tightened around his, just barely. And for the first time since he'd found her dying in the forest, Thane let himself believe she was actually going to make it. Chapter 6. Silver Eyes and Sovereignty. Tessa woke to the sound of breathing that wasn't her own. For a moment, she simply existed, aware of warmth, softness, the absence of pain that had become so constant she'd forgotten what life felt like without it. Her body felt heavy, disconnected, like she was inhabiting borrowed flesh. Where was she? Memory returned in fragments. The forest. The cub. The rogues. The dying. Tessa's eyes snapped open. The room that greeted her was nothing like anywhere she'd ever been. High ceilings carved from pale stone. Windows letting in early dawn light. Furniture that looked expensive enough to feed a small pack for months. Silk sheets beneath her fingers. Silk, moon above, and the scent of cedarwood and winter frost permeating everything. This wasn't a healer's ward. This was somewhere important. Tessa tried to sit up and immediately gasped as pain lanced through her torso. Not the agony of dying, but the deep ache of injuries recently healed. Her shoulder throbbed. Her ribs protested. Everything hurt in a way that said her body was knitting itself back together, but wasn't done yet. Easy. A deep voice said from her left, and Tessa's head whipped toward the sound. A man sat in a chair beside her bed, and not just any man. Even exhausted, with shadows under his eyes and his pale gold hair slightly disheveled, he radiated power. High cheekbones, strong jaw, ice blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her. He was beautiful in the way winter storms were beautiful, dangerous, and impossible to look away from. And he was watching her with an intensity that made Tessa's breath catch. Who? Her voice came out as barely more than a rasp. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Water, the man offered, already reaching for a crystal glass on the bedside table. He held it to her lips carefully, supporting the back of her head with one hand while she drank. The water was cool and perfect. Tessa drank greedily until he pulled the glass away. Not too much at once, he said gently. You haven't had anything but magic sustaining you for 6 days. 6 days. Tessa stared at him. I've been unconscious for 6 days? Yes. He set the glass down, his movements careful, controlled. You nearly died. You did die, technically, for a few seconds before the healers got your heart beating again. The cub. The cub, Tessa croaked, grabbing the man's sleeve with surprising strength. White fur, blue eyes, is he. He's fine, the man assured her immediately, and something in his expression softened. Thanks to you. He's right here, actually. He gestured to something on Tessa's other side. She turned her head, carefully because everything still hurt, and felt her heart stop for an entirely different reason. A small boy was curled up on a cot next to her bed, fast asleep. Pale blonde hair, round cheeks, and his tiny hand was wrapped around hers, fingers interlaced even in sleep. He hasn't left your side, the man said quietly. Not for more than a few minutes at a time. He's been talking to you, telling you stories, holding your hand. He was convinced you could hear him. Tessa stared at the sleeping child, feeling something crack open in her chest. He was beautiful. Perfect. Alive. She'd saved him. She'd actually saved him. I thought I died, she whispered. I gave him everything. I didn't think there'd be anything left to bring back. You almost didn't come back, the man said, and there was something raw in his voice. You used Soulweaver magic. Do you understand how rare that is? How dangerous? Soulweaver. The word sent a chill down Tessa's spine. She remembered now. The desperate pull of magic from places deeper than she'd known existed. The feeling of something ancient and terrible awakening inside her. The way it had felt both right and wrong simultaneously. I'm just a healer, Tessa said weakly. I didn't mean to. You awakened it through pure sacrifice, the man interrupted gently. Trying to save someone you didn't even know. That's how the gift works according to the old texts. It only manifests in those with the purest intentions. He paused, studying her face with those piercing blue eyes. My name is Thane Silvercrest. I'm Alpha Sovereign of the Winterborn Dominion. And the boy you saved, his voice filled with something Tessa couldn't quite name, is my son, Cashin, my only child, the heir to my throne. The world tilted sideways. Sovereign. Throne. Heir. I didn't know, Tessa breathed, her free hand going to her throat. He was so small, and they were going to kill him. I couldn't. I know. Thane's expression was impossibly gentle. That's what makes you extraordinary. You saw a child in danger, and you didn't hesitate. You gave everything to protect him. Tessa's mind was racing, trying to process. She was in a palace. She'd saved a prince. The man sitting beside her was a sovereign, one of the most powerful alphas in all the territories. And she was nobody. A wandering healer with no pack, no family, nothing to her name but the clothes she'd been wearing and her father's knife. I should go, Tessa said suddenly, trying to sit up despite the pain. I shouldn't be here. This is too much. I'm not. Stop. Thane's hand on her uninjured shoulder was gentle but firm, keeping her from rising. You're not going anywhere. Not until you're healed. Not until... He hesitated, something flickering across his face. There's something else you need to know, he said quietly. When I found you in the forest, dying beside my son, I felt something. The mate bond. Tessa's breath stopped. You're my true mate, Tessa. The words hung in the air between them like smoke, impossible to take back.
Mate. True mate.
Fated mate. The thing every wolf dreamed of finding and most never did. The connection that transcended choice, that bound souls together across lifetimes. That's not possible, Tessa heard herself say. I'm nobody.
I don't even have a pack.
The moon goddess wouldn't. The moon goddess paired you with me. Thane interrupted, his voice carrying absolute certainty, because you're exactly what I need. What Kasha needs. Someone brave enough to fight impossible odds. Someone selfless enough to die for a stranger's child. Someone strong enough to unlock a gift that's been lost for 3 centuries. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her free hand, the one the boy wasn't holding. The moment their skin touched, Tessa felt it. Silver threads materialized in the air between them, visible only to her, shimmering with potential and promise. The mate bond, made manifest. She could feel Thane on the other end of it, his strength, his determination, his bone-deep relief that she was awake and alive. It was overwhelming. I can't. Tessa tried to pull her hand away, but Thane held firm. Not forcefully, just present.
Steady.
I'm not asking you to accept it right away, he said, his voice gentling. I know this is overwhelming. You just woke up. You're in a strange place. You've learned you have magic you didn't know existed, and now I'm telling you that fate has bound us together. He squeezed her hand gently. But I want you to know that you're safe here. You have a place here, for as long as you want it.
Why?
Tessa's voice broke on the word. Why would you want someone like me? I look like moonlight made flesh. Thane finished softly. Like winter given form. Like something rare and precious and beautiful. Tessa's eyes filled with tears she couldn't stop. No one had ever called her beautiful. Ghost Girl, Death's Daughter, Bad Omen. Those were the names she'd collected over 7 years of wandering. I don't understand, she whispered. You don't have to understand right now, Thane said. Right now, you just need to heal. And when you're stronger, we'll talk. About the bond, about what happened in the forest, about what comes next. But Tessa, his ice-blue eyes held hers with an intensity that stole her breath. You're not alone anymore. Even if you choose to reject the bond, even if you decide you want nothing to do with me, you'll still have a place here. You saved my son. That makes you family, whether you want it or not. A small sound from the cot made them both turn. Cashin was waking up, his eyes blinking open slowly. When he saw Tessa looking at him, his entire face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. You're awake, he gasped, scrambling upright so fast he nearly fell off the cot.
Papa.
Papa, she's awake. I told you she'd wake up. I told you. You did tell me, Thane agreed, his voice warm with affection. You were right. Cashin climbed onto Tessa's bed carefully, avoiding her injuries with the awareness of a child who'd been coached by healers. He settled beside her, his small hand still holding hers, his ice-blue eyes, so like his father's, studying her face with wonder. Hi, he said shyly. I'm Cashin. But you can call me Cass if you want. Thank you for saving me from the bad men. You were really brave. Tessa's throat closed up entirely. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe past the emotion threatening to choke her. This child, this beautiful, perfect child, was alive because of her. "Hi, Cashin," she finally managed, her voice thick with tears. "I'm Tessa." "That's a pretty name," Cashin said seriously. "It sounds like nighttime." "I like nighttime because the moon comes out and mama," he paused, glanced at his father, then continued. "My first mama, she used to say the moon watches over all wolves. So she's watching over you too." That's a nice thought," Tessa said softly. "Are you going to stay?" Cashin asked, with the bluntness only children possessed. "Papa says you might leave when you're better, but I want you to stay. You're nice, and you smell good, and you hold my hand even when you're sleeping." Tessa's eyes met Thane's over the boy's head. The sovereign's expression was carefully neutral, but she could feel something through the bond. Hope, maybe. Or fear. Or both. "I don't know," Tessa admitted honestly, because she'd never learned how to lie to children. "I've been wandering for a long time. Staying in one place is scary." "Being alone is scary too," Cashin said quietly. "I know because I was alone for a long time after my mama died, even though Papa was there. It's a different kind of alone. The inside kind." Thane inhaled sharply. Tessa stared at the 3-year-old who somehow understood loneliness better than most adults. "You're right," she said softly. "The inside kind of alone is the hardest." "But you don't have to be alone anymore," Cashin said, squeezing her hand. "Because you have me now, and Papa, and all the healers who kept you alive, and the wild wolves who came to protect you. Did you know about them? They were really cool." "Wild wolves." Tessa looked at Thane questioningly. "The white wolves from the Valewood," Thane explained. "They gathered when you awakened your gift. They followed us all the way back to the palace, staying just out of sight. They recognized what you are, what you did."
He paused.
"They're still out there, actually, in the forests around the palace. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For you," Thane said simply. "Soulweavers are sacred to them. They won't leave until they know you're safe." The weight of that settled over Tessa like a heavy cloak. Sacred. Family.
Mate.
Prince. Too much. It was all too much. But Cashin was still holding her hand, looking at her with those trusting blue eyes, and she didn't have the heart to pull away. "I need time," Tessa said finally, looking at Thane.
To heal.
"To think. To understand what all of this means." "Take all the time you need," Thane said immediately. "Weeks, months, however long you need. This is your home now, if you'll have it. No pressure. No expectations." Tessa wanted to argue that surely there were expectations. She was his mate, after all, and mates had duties, but exhaustion was creeping over her like a tide. "I'm tired," she admitted. "Then rest," Thane said, already standing. "Come on, Cass. Let's let Tessa sleep." But Cashin started to protest. "You can come back after breakfast," Thane promised. "She'll still be here." Cashin looked at Tessa for confirmation. She managed a small smile and nodded. "Okay," the boy said reluctantly. He leaned forward and did something that made Tessa's heart stop. He pressed a quick kiss to her cheek. "Sleep good, Tessa. I'm glad you didn't die." "Me too," Tessa whispered. She watched Thane scoop his son into his arms and carry him toward the door. At the threshold, the sovereign paused and looked back at her. "Welcome home, Tessa Frost," he said quietly. And then they were gone, leaving her alone in silk sheets and morning light, trying to understand how her entire life had changed in the space of a single conversation. "Home," he'd said. Tessa hadn't had a home in 7 years. She wasn't sure she remembered how. Chapter 7. Roots in Stone. The days that followed Tessa's awakening blurred together in a haze of healing, visitors, and overwhelming luxury she didn't know how to process. Alara, the master healer, visited twice daily to check her progress. The elderly woman had keen eyes that seemed to see straight through Tessa's careful walls, and hands that glowed with warm golden magic as she worked. "You're healing remarkably well," Alara announced on the 3rd day after Tessa woke, her weathered face creased with approval. "The Soulweaver gift is already working to repair the damage from within." Your body knows how to heal itself now in ways it didn't before. Tessa flexed her shoulder experimentally. The grinding pain had faded to a dull ache. It doesn't hurt as much. It shouldn't hurt at all within another week, Alara said, making notes on a parchment scroll. Though you'll need to be careful. No shifting for at least a month. No heavy lifting, no. She paused, studying Tessa's face. No running away. Tessa's eyes snapped to the healers. I wasn't. Yes, you were, Alara said mildly. I can see it in how you look at the door every time someone enters. Like you're calculating how fast you could reach it. Like you're planning an escape route even while lying in bed recovering from near death. There was no judgment in her tone, just observation. Tessa looked down at her hands, at the calluses from years of traveling, at the faint scars from 100 small injuries. I've been running for 7 years. It's hard to stop. I imagine it is, Alara said softly. But running won't help you here, child. His Majesty isn't going to force you to stay, and he's certainly not going to hurt you. That boy of his, though, she smiled. He's already decided you hung the moon. Breaking his heart by disappearing would be cruel. I'm not trying to be cruel, Tessa protested. I just don't understand why everyone is being so kind. I'm nobody. I don't belong in a place like this. You saved the Crown Prince's life, Alara pointed out. That alone would earn you a place of honor. But beyond that, she leaned forward, her ancient eyes holding Tessa's. You're the sovereign's true mate. Whether you accept the bond or not, that makes you important, valuable, someone worth protecting. I don't want to be valuable because of fate, Tessa said quietly. I want to be valuable because of me, because of what I choose to do, not what the moon goddess decided before I was born. Alara's expression softened. Then prove it.
Stay.
Not because the bond demands it, but because you choose to. Learn to use your gift properly.
Help people.
Make a difference. Show everyone that you're more than just a pretty face and an accident of destiny. The challenge hung in the air between them. What if I'm not strong enough? Tessa whispered. You fought 3 shadow-touched rogues and won, Alara said dryly. You awaken magic that's been extinct for 3 centuries. You gave your life to save a child you didn't know. I think you're plenty strong enough. The question is, are you brave enough to stop running and start living? Before Tessa could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Come in, Alara called, standing and gathering her supplies. Cashin burst through the doorway like a small, excited whirlwind. He'd been visiting every day, sometimes multiple times, always with something new to show her or tell her. Today he carried what looked like a badly drawn picture. Tessa, look what I made. He scrambled onto her bed with the ease of familiarity, carefully avoiding her still healing ribs. It's you and me and Papa and the wild wolves.
See?
That's you with the moon hair, and that's me, and that's Papa being tall, and those are the wolves. Tessa studied the drawing. Crude stick figures in crayon, but undeniably charming. She was apparently purple, because you're magic and magic is purple. Cashin was blue, Thane was gold, and the wolves were white with too many legs. It's beautiful, Tessa said honestly, and watched Cashin's face light up. You can keep it, he announced. To remember that you have a family now. The word hit Tessa like a physical blow. Family. Cass, she said carefully, I'm not sure. I know Papa explained about choices. Cashin interrupted with the confidence of a child who'd clearly rehearsed this. And I know you get to choose if you want to be his mate or not. But you already saved me, and that makes you family even if you don't marry Papa. Right? He looked so earnest, so hopeful, that Tessa couldn't bring herself to argue. Right, she agreed softly. Good. Cashin settled against her uninjured side, apparently content to stay. Can I tell you about my lessons today? My tutor says I'm learning really fast now. I used to not talk much, but now I talk all the time. Papa says it's because I'm happy again. And he launched into a detailed explanation of whatever 3-year-olds learned in royal tutoring sessions, complete with dramatic hand gestures and sound effects. Alara caught Tessa's eye from where she stood by the door, smiled knowingly, and slipped out quietly. Tessa found herself listening to Cashin's chatter with a strange warmth spreading through her chest. When had she last spent time with children? When had anyone wanted to just be near her, with no ulterior motive, no fear in their eyes? And then the wild wolves howled, and it was so loud.
Cashin was saying.
Have you heard of them?
They howl every night now.
Alara says they're singing to you. Singing to me? Tessa repeated. Because you're special. Because you have the old magic. Cashin looked up at her with those impossibly blue eyes. Does it hurt? Magic. Sometimes, Tessa admitted. When I used it to heal you, it hurt a lot.
But now.
She flexed her fingers, feeling the subtle hum of power beneath her skin. Now it just feels like it's waiting. Like it wants to be used, but doesn't know how yet. Maybe someone can teach you, Cashin suggested. Papa has lots of smart people who know about old things. They have books and scrolls and everything. Maybe, Tessa said non-committally. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Cashin spoke again, his voice smaller than before. Tessa, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to leave? He wouldn't meet her eyes, picking at the edge of her blanket instead. Papa says you won't, but I heard some of the servants talking. They said omegas like you don't stay in one place. They said you'll get scared and run away as soon as you're better. Tessa's heart clenched. I don't know, she said honestly, because she'd never learned to lie to him. I've been moving for so long, Cass. Staying still feels strange. Scary even. But you're not alone anymore, Cashin said, looking up at her with shining eyes. You have me. And I'm not scared, right? No, Tessa agreed, her throat tight. You're not scary at all. Then stay, Cashin said simply. At least for a little while. Please? I like having you here. It feels like the sad empty place inside got filled up. Does that make sense? It made perfect sense. Because Tessa felt it too. The hollow space she'd carried for 7 years. The loneliness that had become so constant she'd stopped noticing it. And somehow, this small boy with his earnest face and warm hands was making that emptiness hurt less. I'll stay for a little while, Tessa heard herself promise. At least until I'm healed. Okay. Cashin threw his arms around her neck, careful of her shoulder, and squeezed tight. Thank you. Tessa hugged him back awkwardly and used to physical affection, but finding it wasn't as uncomfortable as she'd expected. Actually, it felt nice. The door opened again, and Thane stepped through. He'd been giving her space the past few days, only visiting briefly with Cashin or to check that she had everything she needed. Now he paused in the doorway, taking in the scene, his son wrapped around Tessa, both of them looking more peaceful than they had in days. Something complicated flickered across his face. Cass, he said gently, Tessa needs to rest. Come on, let's go get lunch. But I'm not hungry, Cashin protested. You're always hungry, Thane countered with a slight smile. And Tessa needs time to herself. You can visit again after your nap. Cashin pouted but climbed off the bed reluctantly. Promise you'll still be here? He asked Tessa. I promise, Tessa said. Okay. He turned to leave with his father, then paused and ran back to press another quick kiss to her cheek. Bye, Tessa. And then he was gone, leaving Tessa alone with Thane. The Sovereign studied her for a long moment, those ice-blue eyes unreadable. He's getting attached, Thane said quietly. I know, Tessa replied. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. Thane's voice was firm. Cashin hasn't been this happy since his mother died. Seeing him smile, hearing him laugh, watching him run around like a normal child instead of a scared, silent ghost, his voice roughened. You've given him something I couldn't.
Hope. Joy.
A reason to trust again. I'm just being myself, Tessa said uncertainly. Exactly. Thane moved closer, stopping a respectful distance from the bed. You're genuine with him. You don't talk down to him or try to manipulate him. You treat him like a person, not a political tool or a symbol. He can sense that. The mate bond hummed between them, barely noticeable but always present. Tessa had been trying to ignore it, but in moments like this, when they were alone and the air felt charged, it was impossible not to feel. I told him I'd stay for a little while, Tessa said. At least until I'm healed. But Thane. She met his eyes directly. I can't promise more than that. I don't know how to be part of a family. I don't know how to stay in one place. And I definitely don't know how to be someone's mate. I'm not asking for promises, Thane said softly. I'm asking for a chance. Time to get to know each other. Time for you to heal, to learn about your gift, to decide what you want your life to look like. He took another step closer. The bond is there whether we want it or not, he continued. But what we do with it, that's up to us. If you decide you want nothing to do with me romantically, I'll respect that. You'll still have a place here. You'll still be important to Cashin if you choose to be. Nothing changes that. Why are you being so understanding? Tessa asked, frustration creeping into her voice. Most alphas would demand I accept the bond, would use it to control me. I'm not most alphas, Thane said simply. And I've learned that the things worth having are the things freely given. I don't want a mate who's with me because fate demands it. I want a partner who chooses me, who wakes up every day and decides I'm worth staying for. The honesty in his voice made Tessa's chest ache. I don't know if I can be that person, she whispered. Then don't be, Thane said. Not yet. Just be here. Be Tessa. Let us get to know the real you, not the ghost girl who's been running for 7 years. And maybe, eventually, you'll realize you're more than you think you are. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, he said. Tomorrow, if you're feeling strong enough, I'd like to show you something. The scholars have been researching Soulweaver magic, and they've found some texts that might help you understand what you can do. Would you be interested? Despite herself, Tessa felt a flicker of curiosity. Yes, she said. I'd like that. Thane's smile was subtle but genuine. Good. I'll have someone bring you lunch. Rest well, Tessa. And then he was gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the fading warmth of the mate bond. Tessa looked down at Cashin's drawing, at the crude purple stick figure with white hair standing between a small blue figure and a tall gold one. Family, Cashin had said. Maybe, Tessa thought, just maybe, she could let herself believe that for a little while. Just until she was healed enough to run again. If she even wanted to run anymore. Chapter 8. The Gift Unfolds. The library was unlike anything Tessa had ever seen. It stretched 3 stories high, with shelves carved directly into stone walls and a ceiling painted with constellations that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. Hundreds, no, thousands of books, scrolls, and ancient texts filled every available space, organized in a way that probably made sense to scholars, but looked like beautiful chaos to Tessa's eyes. Overwhelming, isn't it? Thane said, watching her reaction with barely concealed amusement. Tessa stood in the doorway, supported by a walking stick Alara had insisted she use. Her legs still trembled after a week in bed, but she'd refused to be carried. The weakness in her body frustrated her. She who'd walked miles every day for 7 years, now barely able to cross a room without stopping to rest. It's incredible, Tessa breathed. I've never seen so many books in one place. The Silvercrest collection has been growing for 400 years, Thane explained, offering his arm for support. After a moment's hesitation, Tessa took it. Every sovereign adds to it. My contribution has been focused on recovering lost magical knowledge. He guided her carefully through the massive space, past reading nooks and study tables where several scholars looked up curiously at their approach. Tessa felt their stares like physical touches, taking in her white hair, pale skin, the way she leaned on the sovereign's arm. They knew what she was. Word had spread through the palace within hours of her waking. The sovereign's mate. The Soulweaver. The woman who'd saved the crown prince. Tessa wanted to disappear. Ignore them, Thane murmured, sensing her discomfort. They're curious, not hostile. Most of them are excited to meet you, actually. They've been researching Soulweaver magic nonstop since we brought you here.
Why? Tessa asked.
Because you're a miracle, a new voice said. An elderly man emerged from between shelves, arms laden with scrolls. He was small, slightly hunched, with spectacles perched on his nose and ink stains on his fingers. His eyes, though, they were sharp as knives despite his age. "Tessa, this is Master Aldrich," Thane introduced. "Chief scholar and the foremost expert on ancient magic in the territories. He's been leading the research." "Foremost expert is generous, Your Majesty," Aldrich said, setting his scrolls on a nearby table with surprising care. "Though I've certainly been trying to earn the title these past days." He turned to Tessa, studying her with undisguised fascination. "You, young lady, have given me the academic challenge of a lifetime. Soulweaver magic hasn't been documented in active practice for 317 years. Everything we know comes from fragmented texts and oral histories." "I don't understand it myself," Tessa admitted. "I've been healing since I was a child, but what happened in the forest, that was different. It felt older, wilder." "Because it is older," Aldrich said, gesturing for them to sit. Thane helped Tessa into a cushioned chair before taking the seat beside her. Traditional healing magic works by accelerating the body's natural processes. You're essentially telling the body to heal faster, providing energy to speed the work along. But Soulweaver magic, his eyes gleamed with scholarly excitement. Soulweaver magic manipulates life force itself. You're not just healing. You're transferring vitality, essence, the very energy that separates living from dead. A chill ran down Tessa's spine. "That's why I almost died," she said quietly. "I gave the cub, Cashin, my own life force. There was nothing left for me." "Precisely." Aldrich unrolled one of the scrolls, revealing faded text and diagrams. The ancient Soulweavers understood this. They were trained from childhood to manage their gift carefully, to never drain themselves past the point of return. You, having no training, did what came instinctively. You gave everything. "Should have killed her," Thane said, his voice tight. "Why didn't it?" Aldrich pushed his spectacles up. "That's the fascinating part. According to these texts, Soulweaver magic can be reciprocal. When you heal someone with such pure intention, with total selflessness, the magic sometimes gives back. The wild wolves recognized this. They came to protect you because your sacrifice created a sort of sacred debt, for lack of a better term." "The wolves gave her life back?" Thane asked sharply. "Not directly," Aldrich clarified. "But they kept vigil. Their presence, their recognition of her sacrifice, it may have anchored her to life just long enough for the healers to work. Soulweaver magic responds to intention and emotion. Your desperation to save the prince created a resonance that the old magic recognized and honored." Tessa's head was spinning. "So, what does that mean for me now? What can I actually do with this gift?" Aldrich's expression grew serious. "That depends on how much you're willing to learn, and how much you're willing to risk." He spread several more scrolls across the table. Traditional Soulweaver abilities include enhanced healing without self-sacrifice when properly trained. Life force sensing, you can detect illness, injury, even emotional trauma before it manifests physically. Life extension, not immortality, but the ability to strengthen someone's vitality, potentially adding years to their life. And he paused dramatically. Emotional healing, the ability to sense and soothe wounds of the spirit, not just the body. Cashin mentioned that, Tessa said softly. He said I made the hurt inside him feel better. You likely did, Aldrich confirmed. The text suggests Soulweavers were revered not just as healers, but as counselors, because they could literally feel another's pain and help ease it. Tessa thought about the hollow ache she'd carried for 7 years. The loneliness, the grief, the accumulated hurt of being rejected and feared everywhere she went. Can I heal myself? She asked quietly. Emotionally, I mean. Aldrich's expression softened. The texts are unclear on that point. Some suggest Soulweavers could heal their own wounds. Others say the gift only works on others, that attempting to use it on oneself is dangerous. We simply don't know. Then we'll be careful, Thane said firmly. We'll research, we'll test cautiously, and we won't push past safe limits. Tessa looked at him. You're not doing this alone, Thane said, meeting her eyes. Whether you accept the mate bond or not, you're part of this kingdom now. Part of my responsibility. And I don't let my people face danger without support. The mate bond hummed between them, warm and insistent. There's more, Aldrich said, pulling out another scroll, this one clearly older than the others, the parchment brittle with age. This text describes training exercises for young Soulweavers, basic techniques to build control and understanding of the gift. With your Majesty's permission, I'd like to work with Miss Tessa to see if these methods still hold validity. That's up to Tessa, Thane said immediately, turning to her. No pressure. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. Tessa stared at the ancient scroll, at the faded diagrams showing hand positions and meditation poses. Part of her wanted to refuse, to insist she was just a simple healer, that this was too much responsibility, too much attention. But another part, the part that had fought 3 rogues to save a child, the part that had unlocked magic lost for centuries, that part wanted to know what she was capable of. I want to learn, Tessa said finally. Not because I have to. Not because anyone expects it, but because this gift is part of me now, and I need to understand it. Aldrich's face split into a delighted grin. Excellent. We'll start with basic exercises tomorrow, if you're feeling strong enough. Nothing strenuous, just meditation and sensing techniques. I can do that, Tessa agreed. They spent the next hour poring over texts, Aldrich explaining concepts with infectious enthusiasm while Thane listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that showed he'd been studying this material himself. Tessa found herself relaxing despite the overwhelming information. This felt right. Learning.
Growing.
Having a purpose beyond just surviving day to day. A commotion near the library entrance interrupted them. Cashin burst through the doors, his young tutor chasing after him apologetically. Tessa.
Papa.
I finished my letters early, and oh. He skidded to a stop, taking in the scrolls spread across the table. Are you learning about magic? Can I watch? Cass, Thane said with fond exasperation. You're supposed to be in lessons. I finished, Cashin insisted. All my letters, perfect. Lady Mira said so. And then she said I could have free time, so I came to find you. The tutor, a young woman with kind eyes, nodded confirmation. He did exceptionally well today, Your Majesty. I saw no harm in letting him come find you. Thank you, Lady Mira, Thane said. You're dismissed for the day. Cashin immediately climbed into the chair beside Tessa, peering at the scrolls with 3-year-old curiosity. What's this one say? It's about healing magic, Tessa explained, pointing to a diagram. See these symbols? They represent different types of life energy. Like the energy you used to make me better?
Cashin asked.
Exactly like that.
Cool.
Cashin settled against her side, content to watch and listen while the adults continued their discussion. Tessa found herself absently running her fingers through his pale blonde hair, the gesture coming naturally despite her lack of experience with children. The boy hummed happily, clearly comfortable with the affection. Over Cashin's head, Tessa caught Thane watching them with an expression that made her breath catch. There was longing there and hope, and something deeper that she wasn't ready to name. The mate bond pulsed, warm and persistent. Actually, Aldrich said, seemingly oblivious to the moment between them, having young Cashin here presents an opportunity. One of the training exercises involves sensing life force in others. Tessa, with your permission, I'd like to see if you can sense the prince's vitality. Just observe, not manipulate. Think of it as reading his energy signature. Tessa hesitated. Is it safe? Perfectly safe, Aldrich assured. You're not taking or giving anything, just observing. Okay, Tessa agreed slowly. She looked down at Cashin. Can I try something with my magic? It won't hurt, I promise. Okay, Cashin said eagerly. Do I need to sit still? Just be yourself, Tessa said. She placed one hand gently on Cashin's shoulder and closed her eyes, reaching for that deep place inside where the Soulweaver magic lived. It responded immediately, uncoiling like a drowsy serpent, eager to be used. Instead of pushing it outward, she let it extend gently, like reaching out with invisible fingers. And suddenly, she could feel Cassion's life force like warmth beneath her hand. It was beautiful. His energy glowed bright and pure, untainted by shadow or darkness. But there were also marks, not physical injuries but emotional ones. Faint scars from trauma, from loss, from the fear he'd experienced. And threaded through everything, new and shining, bonds of affection. Connection to his father. Connection to the palace staff who cared for him. And a bright, golden thread leading directly to her. Tessa's eyes flew open. "I can see it," she breathed. His life force. His emotions. His connections to people he loves. "Remarkable," Aldrich whispered, scribbling notes frantically. "Can you describe what you sense?" "He's bright," Tessa said, choosing her words carefully. "Strong and healthy. But there are shadows, old hurts that haven't fully healed. Fear from what happened in the forest. Grief from losing his mother." She looked at Thane. "But also hope. So much hope. And love. He loves his father desperately." Thane's expression cracked, raw emotion flickering across his features before he controlled it. "And there's a connection to me," Tessa continued softly, looking down at Cassion. "Golden and bright. Like trust made visible." Cassion beamed up at her. "That's because you're special. Papa says people we love connect to us with invisible threads. Is that what you're seeing?" "I think so," Tessa said, her voice thick. She released the magic, letting it retreat back to its resting place inside her. The effort left her slightly dizzy, but not dangerously so. "That was amazing," Cassion said, bouncing slightly. "Did you see Papa too? He has lots of threads because everyone loves him." "I only looked at you," Tessa said. Then, without quite meaning to, she glanced at Thane. "Though I suppose I could try." "No," Thane said quickly, too quickly. "Not today. You're still recovering. Don't push yourself." But Tessa had already felt it. The moment her eyes met his, her magic had reached out instinctively, drawn by the mate bond like iron to a lodestone. And in that brief instant, she'd sensed him. Powerful. Controlled. But beneath the sovereignty and strength, lonely. So deeply lonely it made her chest ache. And there, bright as the sun, a silver thread connecting him to her. The mate bond, visible in ways she'd never imagined. Their eyes locked, and Tessa knew he'd felt her awareness. Felt her sensing what lay beneath his carefully maintained control. "Tessa," Thane said softly, a question in his voice. "I'm tired," Tessa said, looking away. "I should rest." It wasn't entirely a lie. She was tired. But more than that, she was overwhelmed by what she'd just discovered. By the depth of connection the mate bond created. By the vulnerability she'd glimpsed in a man who seemed unshakable. "Of course," Thane said, standing immediately. "Aldrich, we'll continue this tomorrow." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Miss Tessa, you did wonderfully today." The scholar beamed at her. "I look forward to our next session." Thane helped Tessa stand, offering his arm again. Cassion took her other hand, chattering about what he'd do tomorrow, and could Tessa come watch his lessons, and would she like to see his favorite place in the gardens? But Tessa barely heard him. All she could think about was that silver thread connecting her to Thane, and the terrifying realization that she was beginning to care what happened to it. Chapter 9. Gardens and Ghosts. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that Tessa had never known before. Mornings were for training with Aldrich, meditation exercises, sensing practice, learning to control the flow of Soulweaver magic without draining herself dangerously. The old scholar was patient and enthusiastic, celebrating every small success and treating every setback as a learning opportunity. Afternoons belonged to Cassion. The boy had claimed her completely, dragging her to his lessons, showing her his favorite hiding spots in the palace, insisting she read him stories before his nap. Tessa had never spent so much time with a child, had never realized how exhausting and wonderful they could be in equal measure. Evenings were complicated. Thane joined them for dinner most nights, just the three of them in a small dining room rather than the formal great hall. He'd ask about her day, tell stories about kingdom matters that he made entertaining rather than boring, and watch with barely concealed warmth as Cashin chatted between them. It felt dangerously like being a family. And Tessa was beginning to forget why she'd ever wanted to run. "You're getting stronger," Alara observed during one of her checkups. The healer's hands glowed as she examined Tessa's shoulder, which had healed to the point of only occasional twinges. "Another week and you'll be fully recovered. Physically, at least." "What does that mean?"
Tessa asked.
Alara's knowing eyes met hers. "It means soon you'll have to make a choice. You told Cashin you'd stay until you were healed. Well, you're almost healed. What happens then?" Tessa looked out the window of her suite as if she owned it, as if she belonged here. The view showed the palace gardens, vast and beautiful, with autumn colors painting the trees in shades of gold and crimson. "I don't know," Tessa admitted quietly. "I thought I'd want to leave by now."
But
You've found something worth staying for?" Alara suggested gently. "Multiple things," Tessa corrected. "Cashin, the training, this place, and—" She trailed off. "And the sovereign," Alara finished. "The mate bond." "I barely know him," Tessa protested. "We've had dinner together. We talk sometimes. But that's not the same as truly knowing someone." "Then get to know him," Alara said practically. "You've been hiding behind Cashin and your training, using them as barriers. Maybe it's time to actually face what the bond is trying to tell you." "What if I don't like what I find?"
Tessa asked.
"What if you do?" Alara countered. "Which scares you more?" The healer left before Tessa could answer, leaving her alone with thoughts that had been circling for weeks. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. "Come in," Tessa called. Thane entered, and Tessa's breath caught despite herself. He was dressed casually today, simple tunic and trousers rather than formal sovereignty attire, and his pale gold hair was slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said. "No, I was just thinking." "Dangerous pastime," Thane said with a slight smile. "I came to ask if you'd like to take a walk. The gardens are beautiful this time of year, and Cashin is with his combat instructor for the next hour. I thought perhaps—" He paused. "I thought perhaps we could talk. Just the two of us. No 3-year-old buffer." Tessa's heart hammered. "Alara just cleared me for light exercise." "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes," Tessa heard herself say. They walked through the palace in comfortable silence, servants bowing as they passed. Tessa still wasn't used to that, the respect, the deference. She kept expecting someone to realize she didn't belong here and throw her out. The gardens were even more stunning up close than from her window. Carefully maintained paths wound between flower beds and ornamental trees. A fountain burbled somewhere nearby, and the scent of late-blooming roses perfumed the air. "This was my mother's favorite place," Thane said as they walked. "She designed most of it herself. Said that even sovereigns needed beauty in their lives, something gentle to balance the harshness of rule." "She sounds wise," Tessa said. "She was." Thane's expression was distant from memory. "She died when I was 15. My father followed her a year later. They were true mates. When she passed, he lost the will to live. He lasted long enough to see me crowned, then simply faded." "I'm sorry," Tessa said softly. "It was a long time ago." Thane led her to a bench beneath a willow tree, its trailing branches creating a private curtain around them. "But it taught me something about mate bonds. They're not just romantic fancy. They're real, powerful, and the connection goes deeper than most people understand." He turned to face her fully. "Which is why I wanted to talk to you alone. About us. About the bond." Tessa's mouth went dry. "Thane." "Let me finish," he said gently.
"Please."
"I've been patient, giving you space, letting you heal and adjust. But Alara tells me you're nearly recovered, which means you'll be making decisions soon about your future. And I need you to understand something before you do." He took a breath. "I don't want you to stay because the bond demands it. I don't want you to accept me because you feel obligated." "But Tessa," his ice blue eyes held hers with an intensity that stole her breath. I want you to know that I'm already yours.
Completely.
The bond may have brought us together, but what I feel now, that's not fate. That's the choice. You barely know me, Tessa whispered. I know you're brave enough to fight impossible odds to save a child you didn't know. I know you're patient with Cashin even when he's being difficult. I know you push yourself in training even when you're exhausted because you want to master your gift properly. I know you have nightmares sometimes. I hear you cry out through the walls, but you never ask for help because you're so used to handling everything alone. Tessa stared at him, realizing he'd been paying far more attention than she'd thought. I know your favorite color is silver blue because you smiled when Cashin showed you that scarf. I know you hate crowded rooms because your shoulders tense whenever too many people are around. I know you're left-handed and you prefer tea to coffee, and you hum when you think no one's listening. You've been watching me, Tessa said, her voice barely audible. I've been learning you, Thane corrected. The way I'd want someone to teach me, not just surface details, but the real person underneath. And what I've learned, Tessa, is that I don't just want you because fate says we're mates. I want you because you're kind and strong and genuine. Because you make my son laugh. Because when you're in a room, I can't focus on anything else. The mate bond flared between them, silver threads visible in the dappled sunlight. I'm scared, Tessa admitted. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be someone's mate, someone's partner. I've been alone for so long. Then learn with me, Thane said softly. We'll figure out together. No pressure, no expectations. Just possibility. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and took her hand. The moment their skin touched, the bond sang. Not demanding, not controlling, just warm and right. I'm not asking for forever right now, Thane continued. I'm asking for a chance. Time to court you properly, to show you what life could be like here. With me, with Cashin, with a family and a home and people who value you for exactly who you are. Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? Fail at what? Thane asked. Being perfect? None of us are perfect, Tessa. I'm certainly not. I'm a widower raising a traumatized son while trying to rule a kingdom. I make mistakes daily. But I keep trying, keep learning, keep growing. That's all anyone can do. He squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to be anything other than yourself. That's who I want. Not some idealized version, not a perfectly polished Luna, just you. The woman who saved my son. The woman who's learning to use impossible magic. The woman who reads Cashin's silly stories with different voices for each character. A laugh escaped Tessa despite the tears now sliding down her cheeks. You heard that. The walls aren't that thick, Thane said with a slight smile. Your dragon voice needs work, by the way. Cashin loves my dragon voice, Tessa protested. Cashin loves everything about you, Thane said, his expression growing serious again. And so do I. Or I'm well on my way to it. Give me a chance to prove it. Please. Tessa looked at their joined hands, at the silver threads connecting them, at the hope in Thane's ice-blue eyes. She thought about Cashin's laughter, about Aldrich's patient teaching, about waking up in silk sheets instead of dirt, about having people who cared whether she lived or died. She thought about 7 years of running, of loneliness, of being nobody to everyone. And she thought about what Alara had asked, which scared her more, not liking what she found, or liking it too much. Okay, Tessa whispered. Okay, I'll stay. Not just until I'm healed. I'll stay and we'll see what happens. Together. The smile that spread across Thane's face was like sunrise, slow, warm, illuminating everything. Thank you, he said quietly. I promise you won't regret this. I might, Tessa said honestly. But I'm tired of running. Tired of being afraid. If I'm going to take a risk, I want it to be on someone worth it. I'll do everything I can to be worth it, Thane promised. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands still clasped, the mate bond humming contentedly between them. So, Tessa said eventually, what does courting entail exactly? I don't know how this works. Neither do I, really, Thane admitted. Sarah and I were arranged. We became friends and partners, but we didn't have this. He gestured at the bond threads. This is new for me too, but I suppose we start with the basics. Spending time together. Learning what makes each other happy. Probably some formal dates where I try very hard to impress you. You're a sovereign, Tessa pointed out. You're already impressive. But am I impressive to you? Thane asked. That's what matters. Before Tessa could answer, a familiar voice rang out across the garden. Papa.
Tessa.
Where are you? Cashin came running down the path, his combat instructor following at a more sedate pace. The boy's face was flushed with excitement, his eyes bright. Cass, Thane said with fond exasperation. You're supposed to be in lessons. I finished, Cashin announced, skidding to a stop in front of them. Master John says I did really well today, and he noticed their joined hands and his entire face lit up. Are you holding hands? Does that mean you're courting? Are you going to get married? Is Tessa going to be my mama for real? Cashin, Thane said gently.
Slow down.
One question at a time. But are you? Cashin pressed, looking between them with barely contained hope. Tessa met Thane's eyes, saw the same uncertainty she felt reflected there. How did you explain complicated adult relationships to a 3-year-old? We're going to spend more time together, Tessa said carefully, getting to know each other better. And yes, I'm going to stay. Here. With you and your papa. Forever. Cashin asked. For as long as everyone's happy, Tessa amended. It was apparently enough for Cashin. He threw himself at both of them, wrapping his small arms around as many of them as he could reach. I'm so happy, he declared. This is the best day ever. Can we celebrate? Can we have cake? Papa, can we have cake? It's not even noon yet, Cass, Thane said, but he was smiling. But it's a special day, Cashin argued. Tessa's staying forever, so we need cake. That's the rule. What rule? Tessa asked, amused. The rule I just made up, Cashin said confidently. Come on, please. Just a little cake. Thane looked at Tessa, something warm and soft in his expression. What do you think? Should we break protocol and have celebratory cake before lunch? Tessa thought about all the years she'd followed rules, stayed invisible, never asked for anything. I think, she said slowly, that cake sounds perfect. Cashin cheered and grabbed both their hands, tugging them toward the palace, chattering about what kind of cake they should get and whether there would be strawberries, and didn't they think this was just the most wonderful thing ever? And walking between them, Thane on one side, Cashin on the other, both holding her hands like she was precious, Tessa felt something she hadn't felt in 7 years. She felt like she was home. Chapter 10. Threads of Silver and Gold. The courting, as it turned out, was nothing like Tessa expected. She'd imagined formal dinners and stiff conversations, the kind of rigid protocols she'd seen between mated pairs in the packs she'd visited. But Thane seemed determined to throw every expectation out the window. Their first official date happened 2 days after the garden conversation. Thane appeared at her door just after breakfast with a mischievous smile that looked entirely wrong on a sovereign's face. Get your cloak, he said. We're going on an adventure. An adventure? Tessa repeated skeptically. You're the Alpha Sovereign. Don't you have kingdom things to do? I delegated, Thane said cheerfully. For the next 4 hours, I'm just Thane. And you're just Tessa. And we're going to do something completely frivolous. He took her to the market. Not the grand merchant halls where nobles shopped, but the common market in the lower city where regular wolves traded goods and gossip. Thane wore simple clothes with a hood pulled up, and Tessa did the same with her distinctive white hair hidden. Won't people recognize you? Tessa asked as they wove through crowded stalls. Maybe, Thane admitted, but probably not. I do this sometimes. Walk among my people without the crown. It helps me understand what they really need, what they really think. Can't rule well from an ivory tower. They spent the morning sampling street food, watching street performers, and browsing stalls selling everything from hand-carved toys to enchanted trinkets. Thane bought her a silver bracelet engraved with moon phases, slipping it onto her wrist with a gentleness that made her breath catch. To remember today, he said simply. Tessa touched the bracelet, feeling the cool metal warm against her skin. I don't think I could forget this if I tried. A commotion near a food stall caught their attention. A young mother was arguing with a vendor, a small child clinging to her skirts and crying. I told you, I can pay by week's weekend, the woman was saying, desperation in her voice. My mate's been sick, can't work. I just need enough to feed my children until… No credit, the vendor said flatly. That's the rule. You want food, you pay now. Tessa moved before thinking, approaching the woman. Excuse me, how much does she owe? The vendor named a price, not much to Tessa now, but clearly everything to the struggling mother. Tessa pulled coins from the small purse Thane had insisted she carry and handed them over. This should cover it. And enough for next week too. The woman stared at her, tears welling up. I can't. I'll pay you back, I swear. No need, Tessa said gently. She crouched down to the child's level, sensing automatically with her Soulweaver gift. The little girl was healthy but hungry, scared because her mother was scared. It's going to be okay. Your mom is going to get you something good to eat. Thank you, the woman whispered. Moon bless you. Both of you. As they walked away, Thane was quiet. What? Tessa asked. You didn't even hesitate, he said. You saw someone in need and helped immediately. It wasn't that much money, Tessa said, uncomfortable with the attention. It's not about the money. Thane stopped, turning to face her. It's about instinct. You see suffering and your first impulse is to ease it. Do you know how rare that is? How many people would have walked past? I've been that woman, Tessa said quietly. Desperate, hungry, trying to keep going despite everything. I can't just ignore it when I see it in others. Thane's expression was soft, almost odd. You're going to make an incredible Luna. I haven't agreed to be Luna, Tessa pointed out. Yet, Thane said with a slight smile. You haven't agreed yet. Their second date was quieter. Dinner in a private garden pavilion, just the two of them under stars that seemed close enough to touch. Thane had arranged for her favorite foods, including tea she'd only mentioned liking once in passing. You remembered, Tessa said, surprised. I remember everything about you, Thane said simply. They talked for hours. Thane told her about his childhood, about the pressure of being groomed for sovereignty from birth, about his mother's death and his father's slow fading. I was 20 when I took the throne fully, he said. Too young, really. But my father couldn't go on without my mother, and the kingdom needed leadership. So I learned as I went. I made mistakes. Still make them. Like what? Tessa asked. Like waiting too long to address the rogue problem, Thane admitted. The attacks have been increasing for years. Shadow magic is spreading. I knew it was serious, but I kept hoping it would resolve itself, that we could handle it with normal means. And then they took Cashin. His jaw tightened. That was my fault. I should have been more careful. Should have had better security. Should have. Should have what? Tessa interrupted gently. Been omniscient? You can't predict everything, Thane. And you can't protect everyone from everything, no matter how powerful you are. I'm supposed to protect my son, Thane said roughly. And you do, Tessa said. You love him. You spend time with him. You're helping him heal from trauma most children his age can't even comprehend. That's protection too, not just physical, but emotional. Thane looked at her for a long moment. How do you do that? Do what? Make everything seem manageable. Less overwhelming. When you talk, the weight I carry feels lighter. Maybe that's what mates do, Tessa said softly. Share the weight so neither person has to carry it alone. The mate bond pulsed between them, warm and bright. Tell me about your parents, Thane said. You never talk about them. Tessa hesitated, old pain rising. But looking at Thane's open, genuine expression, she found herself wanting to share. They were wonderful, she said quietly. Both healers, both kinds. They never made me feel like my appearance was strange or wrong. My father used to call me his little moonbeam. My mother said I was blessed by winter itself. They sound perfect, Thane said. They were, for me at least. That's what made losing them so hard. Tessa stared at her hands. The rogues came at night. My father fought. He wasn't a warrior, but he fought anyway. Gave my mother time to get me out. She died protecting the pack healer's home. And my father. Her voice cracked. He made me promise to run.
To live.
To use my gift to help others. And you have, Thane said gently. You've honored that promise every day for 7 years.
Have I? Tessa asked.
Or have I just been surviving? Running from pack to pack, never staying, never connecting? That's not living. That's just existing. But you're here now, Thane pointed out. You're not running. You're staying, learning, growing. Building something. That's living, Tessa. She met his eyes, saw the conviction there, and felt something in her chest ease. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me.
The real me.
Not the ghost girl, not the Soulweaver, not even the mate bond, just me. That's all I've ever wanted to see, Thane said. The third date happened spontaneously. Cashin had a nightmare, something about the rogues coming back, and came running to Tessa's room in the middle of the night. She'd comforted him, let him crawl into her bed, and was stroking his hair when Thane appeared in the doorway. I heard him cry out, Thane said quietly. Is he? He's okay, Tessa whispered. Just scared. I've got him. Thane stood there for a moment, something complicated crossing his face as he watched his son curl against Tessa, like she was the safest place in the world. Can I? He gestured vaguely at the bed. Come here, Tessa said softly. Thane climbed onto the other side of the bed, careful not to jostle Cashin. The boy was already drifting back to sleep, secure between the two people who meant the most to him. This is nice, Thane murmured, his voice barely audible. Yeah, Tessa agreed. It is. They talked in whispers while Cashin slept, about nothing and everything, about silly things and serious things, about hopes and fears and dreams for the future. I want more children, Thane admitted. Cashin shouldn't have to bear the weight of being an only heir. And I want.
He paused.
I want a family. A real one. The kind where everyone laughs at dinner and argues about stupid things and supports each other unconditionally. That sounds nice, Tessa said wistfully. We could have that, Thane said, his ice blue eyes holding hers across Cashin's sleeping form. You, me, Cashin. More children if you want them. A real family built on choice, not just duty. I've never thought about children, Tessa admitted. Never let myself imagine that kind of future. Think about it now, Thane encouraged. What would you want if you could have anything? Tessa closed her eyes, letting herself imagine. A home that feels safe. People who don't leave. Children who laugh and know they're loved. Someone who sees me, really sees me, and stays anyway. When she opened her eyes, Thane was watching her with an expression that made her heart stutter. I see you, he said quietly. Every day, I see you more clearly. And Tessa, I'm not going anywhere. The mate bond flared between them, silver threads brightening until they were almost visible in the darkened room. I'm scared, Tessa whispered. Of what? Of wanting this too much. Of believing in it. Of getting comfortable and then having it ripped away. Everything I've ever cared about has been taken from me. Not everything, Thane said gently. Your parents' love, that's still with you. Their teachings, their memory.
No one can take that.
And this, he gestured between them. This is ours to build. Together. And I will fight with everything I have to keep it safe. Promise. Tessa's voice was small, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed. I promise, Thane said with absolute certainty. Cashin stirred between them, mumbling something about wolves and flowers in his sleep. Tessa and Thane smiled at each other over his head. We should sleep, Tessa said. He'll be up at dawn wanting to play. Probably, Thane agreed. But he didn't move to leave. Would it be okay if I stayed?
Just to sleep.
Nothing more. I just... Stay, Tessa said, making the choice before fear could stop her. We're all safer together anyway. So they slept like that, Cashin between them, Tessa's hand resting on the boy's shoulder, Thane's hand covering hers. A family, if only for one night. When Tessa woke at dawn, she found Thane already awake, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," Tessa replied. "I could get used to waking up like this," Thane admitted. "So could I," Tessa said, and realized, with a flutter of panic and hope combined, that she meant it. She was falling for him, for both of them, for this life they were building together. And for the first time in 7 years, that didn't terrify her quite as much as it should have. Chapter 11. Shadow's Return. The peace lasted exactly 4 weeks. For weeks of training with Aldrich, of dinners with Thane and Cashin, of slowly learning what it meant to belong somewhere. For weeks of the mate bond growing stronger, silver threads weaving tighter between her and Thane. For weeks of Cashin calling her Tessa Mama when he thought no one was listening. For weeks of believing she might actually get to keep this. Then the scouts came back. Tessa was in the training yard with Cashin, watching him practice basic defensive stances with Master John when the commotion erupted. 3 wolves burst through the palace gates in full sprint, their fur matted with blood and dirt, exhaustion evident in every movement. Guards converged immediately. Thane appeared from the council chambers, his face already shifting into the hard mask of the sovereign rather than the gentle expression he wore around his family. "Your Majesty," the lead scout gasped, shifting to human form and dropping to one knee despite his obvious injuries. "The eastern border villages. They're gone." Silence crashed through the yard like a physical thing. "Gone how?" Thane's voice was cold, controlled. The voice of a king preparing for war. "Destroyed. Burned. Bodies everywhere." The scout's voice cracked. "Shadow-touched rogues, Your Majesty. Dozens of them, maybe more. They hit 3 villages in one night. No survivors that we could find. And they left." He swallowed hard. "They left a message. Carved into the town hall. It said, 'We're coming for the prince.' And the ghost." Every eye in the courtyard turned to Tessa. She stood frozen, Cashin's small hand clutched in hers, feeling the weight of dozens of stares. The ghost. They meant her. The rogues knew about her, knew she was here. "Tessa Mama?" Cashin's voice was small, frightened. "What does that mean?" Inside, Thane commanded immediately, his alpha authority bringing no argument. "Tessa, take Cashin to his rooms. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me or Alara. Guards escort them. Now." For guards materialized around them instantly. Tessa wanted to argue, to demand answers, to understand what was happening. But Cashin was trembling against her side, and his safety mattered more than her pride. "Come on, sweetheart," she said, keeping her voice steady through sheer force of will. "Let's go play a game inside." "I don't want to play a game," Cashin said, tears already forming. "I want Papa. I want you. I don't want the bad men to come back." "They won't," Tessa promised, even though she had no idea if she could keep that promise. "Your Papa won't let them. Come on." She led him through the palace, guards flanking them like a human wall. Behind them, she could hear Thane issuing rapid commands: scout the perimeter, double the guards, send messengers to allied packs, and prepare the healers for potential wounded. War preparations. Because of her, because she'd saved Cashin and awakened magic that made her a target. In Cashin's room, lavishly decorated with toys and books and everything a young prince could want, Tessa locked the door and tried to figure out how to comfort a terrified child when she was terrified herself. "Tell me a story," Cashin begged, climbing into her lap. "About brave wolves who win against bad guys. Please." So Tessa told stories. One after another, making them up as she went, about wolves who were small but clever, about magic that protected the innocent, about families who stuck together no matter what. All the while, her Soulweaver senses were screaming at her. She could feel the palace's energy shifting, fear spreading through servants and guards, tension winding tighter, the metallic taste of impending violence hanging in the air. And underneath it all, Through the mate bond, she could feel Thane's fury and fear warring with his need to remain controlled. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Finally, a knock sounded at the door. "It's me," Thane's voice came through the wood. Tessa opened the door to find him looking exhausted, his face drawn with stress and his eyes burning with barely contained rage. "Papa." Cashin launched himself at his father, who caught him easily. "Hey, brave one," Thane said, his voice gentling immediately as he held his son. "Are you okay?" "Tessa Mama told me stories," Cashin said. "About wolves who win. We're going to win, right, Papa? The bad men won't get us." Thane's eyes met Tessa's over Cashin's head. She saw the truth there, the uncertainty, the fear, the determination to protect what was his at any cost. "We're going to do everything we can," Thane said carefully. "But Cass, I need you to be brave for me."
Can you do that?
"I can be brave," Cashin said, though his voice wavered. "Like Tessa Mama when she fought the rogues. Super brave." Exactly like that. Thane kissed his son's forehead, then gently set him down. "Now, I need you to go with Master John. He's going to take you to the safe room deep in the palace, the one I showed you, remember? With all the supplies and the secret passages." Cashin's eyes widened. "Are we hiding?" "We're being smart," Thane corrected. "I need to know you're somewhere nothing can reach you. Can you do that for me? Be brave and stay safe." "Okay." Cashin looked at Tessa, his lower lip trembling. "Are you coming too?" Tessa started. "She's coming," Thane said firmly. "Both of you. Safest place in the palace. Non-negotiable." A guard appeared, Master John, the combat instructor, his face grim but determined. "Your Majesty, the safe room is prepared." "Tessa," Thane said, turning to her. "Please, go with John. Keep Cashin safe. I need to coordinate the defenses, and I can't do that if I'm worried about you two." "Tell me what's happening," Tessa demanded. "The truth." Thane hesitated, glanced at Cashin, then spoke quietly. "The rogues are organizing. This wasn't random violence. This was a coordinated attack to send a message. They know about you, about your gift. They know Cashin is my heir. And based on the intelligence we're gathering, they're planning something bigger." "An attack on the palace," Tessa said flatly. "We don't know for certain, but I'm not taking chances." Thane's jaw tightened. The wild wolves have been restless for days. Some of the border patrols have reported unusual activity. "I think something's coming, and I think it's coming soon." "Then let me help," Tessa said. "I'm a healer. If there's fighting, people will be hurt. I can." "You can keep my son safe," Thane interrupted, his voice carrying an alpha command that made her wolf sit up and take notice. "That's how you help. Please, Tessa. I can't fight if I'm terrified about what's happening to you and Cashin. I need to know you're both protected." The mate bond pulsed between them, carrying his genuine fear for their safety. "Okay," Tessa agreed reluctantly. "But Thane, be careful. Come back to us." "Always," he promised. He pulled her close suddenly, one arm still holding Cashin, and pressed his forehead to hers. "You're mine, both of you, and I protect what's mine." "We're yours," Tessa whispered, accepting the truth of it. "Come back to us." Thane kissed her forehead, quick and fierce, then released her. "John, take them. Full security protocol. No one gets past you." "On my honor, Your Majesty," John said. The safe room turned out to be deep underground, accessible only through a hidden passage behind a bookshelf in the royal library. It was larger than Tessa expected, several chambers carved from solid rock, stocked with supplies, weapons, water, food. Multiple exits, all disguised. And enchantments woven into the very walls, making it nearly impossible to detect from outside. "We could survive here for weeks if necessary," John explained as he showed them around. "But hopefully it won't come to that." Cashin was trying to be brave, exploring the rooms with forced enthusiasm. But Tessa could sense his fear through her Soulweaver gift, the trembling in his life force, the shadow of trauma trying to resurface. "Come here, sweetheart," she said, sitting on one of the beds and pulling him close. "Tell me what you're feeling." "Scared," Cashin admitted in a small voice. I don't want the bad men to come back. I don't want them to hurt Papa. Or you. Or anyone. Being scared is okay, Tessa said gently. Brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway. Like you were brave when you saved me?
Cashin asked.
Exactly like that. Tessa stroked his pale blonde hair. And your Papa is being brave now, protecting everyone. And we're being brave by staying safe so he doesn't have to worry about us. I wish I was big, Cashin said. Big enough to fight and help. You'll be big someday, Tessa promised. And until then, you're helping by being strong and safe. That's the most important job right now. They settled in to wait. John stood guard by the main entrance, sword drawn, alert for any threat. Tessa held Cashin and tried not to think about what was happening above them. But through the mate bond, she could feel Thane, his determination, his focus, his burning need to protect his kingdom and his family. She sent her own feelings back along the bond, trust, support, love that she was only now beginning to acknowledge. Come back to us, she thought as hard as she could. Please come back. Hours passed in tense silence. Then, from somewhere far above, they heard it. Howls.
Dozens of them.
Maybe hundreds. The sound of battle joined, of wolves fighting and dying. The attack had begun. Cashin pressed his face into Tessa's shoulder, trembling. Papa, he whimpered. Papa's fighting. And he's strong. Tessa said, though her own heart was hammering. The strongest alpha in the territories. He's going to be okay. But even as she said it, she felt something through the mate bond that made her blood run cold.
Pain.
Sharp and sudden. Thane was hurt. No, Tessa whispered. John's head snapped toward her. What is it? Thane, something's wrong. He's hurt. I can feel it through the bond. The Sovereign can handle himself, John said, though he looked worried. We stay here. That's the order. But Tessa's Soulweaver gift was screaming at her now. Not just Thane's pain, but others. Dozens of injuries, life forces flickering, people dying above them while she hid in safety. She was a healer. These people needed her. And more than that, her mate needed her. I have to go, Tessa said, standing and carefully setting Cashin aside. Absolutely not, John said firmly. The Sovereign ordered. I know what he ordered, Tessa interrupted. But he's hurt, and people are dying, and I'm a Soulweaver. I can help. I have to help. Tessa mama, no. Cashin grabbed her hand. Don't go. The bad men will hurt you. Tessa knelt down, taking Cashin's face in her hands. Listen to me, sweetheart. Your papa needs help. And I'm the only one who can give him the kind of help he needs right now. But I need you to be so brave. Stay here with Master John. Stay safe. Can you do that for me? I don't want you to go, Cashin sobbed. I know, but I'm coming back. I promise you, I'm coming back. Both of us, me and your papa. Together. She kissed his forehead, then stood and faced John. You can't stop me, she said quietly. And you know it. The Sovereign is my mate. I can feel his pain. I'm going to him, with or without your permission. John stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. At least take this. He handed her a short sword, nothing fancy, but well-balanced and sharp. And this. A small vial of silver liquid. Wolfsbane essence. 1 drop on a blade will kill shadow-touched rogues faster than normal wounds. Use it if you have to. Thank you, Tessa said. Don't thank me, John said grimly. Just don't die. The Sovereign would never forgive me. And neither would the prince. Tessa moved toward the exit, Cashin's sobs following her. I'll be back, she called over her shoulder. I promise. And then she was running through the hidden passages, toward the sounds of battle, toward her mate's pain, toward a future that was suddenly, terrifyingly uncertain. Chapter 12. The Soulweaver's Fury. The palace was chaotic. Tessa emerged from the hidden passage into corridors filled with smoke and the metallic scent of blood. Wolves fought in both human and shifted forms, Royal guards against rogues whose eyes gleamed with shadow corruption. Bodies littered the floor, some still moving, others ominously still. Her Soulweaver senses exploded to life, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of injury and death surrounding her. Every wound called to her gift, begging to be healed. Every fading life force pulled at her consciousness, like hooks in her soul. Too many, she thought desperately. I can't save them all, but she could try. A guard stumbled past her, clutching his side where claws had ripped through armor and flesh. Tessa grabbed him, pressing one hand to the wound.
Hold still, she commanded.
Her gift surged outward, knitting torn tissue, sealing blood vessels, dulling pain. The guard gasped as his injury closed, looking at her with wide, awed eyes. The Soulweaver, he breathed. You're supposed to be in the safe room. Where's the sovereign? Tessa demanded. Great Hall, the guard said, already moving back toward the fight. He's holding the main force, but there are so many. Tessa didn't wait to hear more. She ran through smoke-filled corridors, her sword in one hand, the other ready to heal or fight as needed. She passed more wounded, stopping to stabilize the worst injuries with quick bursts of Soulweaver magic. Each healing drained her a little, but she was learning, taking only what she could spare, giving only what they needed to survive. She'd come so far from the desperate girl who'd given everything in the Valewood. A rogue leaped at her from a side passage, mangy gray fur, eyes burning with shadow corruption. Tessa reacted on instinct, dropping low and driving her sword up into its chest. The blade, treated with John's wolfsbane essence, slid through corrupted flesh like butter. The rogue died with a shriek that sounded almost relieved, as if the shadow magic had finally released its hold. Tessa didn't have time to process what she'd done. She kept moving, following the mate bond like a beacon, feeling Thane's pain grow stronger with every step. The great hall doors were shattered, hanging off their hinges. Beyond them, hell had broken loose. Dozens of wolves fought in a space meant for ceremonies and celebrations. Royal guards formed a defensive line around Thane, who stood at the center in his massive white wolf form, larger than any wolf Tessa had ever seen, his ice-blue eyes blazing with fury and determination. But he was injured. Deep gashes across his shoulder, a limp in his left hind leg. Fighting despite the pain, refusing to yield even as rogues kept coming in waves. And at the back of the hall, directing the attack with cold intelligence, stood a wolf unlike any other. He was massive, nearly as large as Thane, but his fur was pure black, not natural black, but the absolute darkness of shadow made manifest. His eyes burned red, and around him, the air itself seemed to warp and twist with corruption. A shadow alpha. The source of the corruption spread through the rogues. Thane! Tessa screamed, without thinking. Every head in the hall turned toward her. The shadow alpha's burning red eyes locked onto her, and his lips pulled back in a snarl that looked horribly like a smile. The ghost, a voice said, wrong, twisted, like multiple voices speaking in unison. The Soulweaver, come to die with her mate. How touching. Tessa run. Thane's voice in her mind, sharp with terror and alpha command. Get out of here now. But Tessa was already moving, not away, but forward. Her Soulweaver gift had shown her something the moment she'd seen the Shadow Alpha. His life force was wrong, twisted, corrupted, but underneath the shadow magic, there was still something alive. Something that could be touched. Something that could be drained. She'd killed a rogue that way once, in the Valewood. Ripped the vitality from his body, and used it to save Cashin. The technique had nearly killed her, but she understood it better now. Understood how to control the flow, how to take without losing herself in the process. You want me? Tessa shouted at the Shadow Alpha. Then come get me. The creature lunged, faster than anything that size should move. But Tessa was ready. She dropped and rolled, came up with her sword raised, slashing across the Shadow Alpha's foreleg. Wolfsbane treated steel bit deep, drawing a howl of genuine pain. Around them, the battle seemed to pause as wolves on both sides recognized what was happening. The Soulweaver was fighting the Shadow Alpha. The ghost girl who looked like she'd break in a strong wind was standing against corruption incarnate. Tessa. Thane was fighting his way toward her, tearing through rogues like they were paper. Don't, you can't. But Tessa wasn't listening. She was reaching deep into her gift, into that place where Soulweaver magic lived. She could feel the Shadow Alpha's life force now, twisted and wrong, but strong. So terribly strong. The creature lunged again. This time, Tessa didn't dodge. She stepped forward, dropping her sword, and pressed both hands against the Shadow Alpha's chest as his jaws closed toward her throat. And pulled. The sensation was horrific, like drinking poison, like swallowing corruption itself. Shadow magic fought her, burning through her veins, trying to twist her own life force into something wrong. But Tessa had learned control, had learned to filter, to take what she needed and reject what would harm her. She ripped vitality from the Shadow Alpha's core, watching his eyes widen in shock and fear. You think shadow magic makes you powerful? Tessa gritted out, her voice strained with effort. I am life and death itself. I am the balance you forgot existed. And you are done. She pulled harder, feeling the creature's life force unraveling, the shadow magic losing its anchor, corruption dissipating like smoke and wind. The Shadow Alpha's form flickered, wolf to man to something in between. His red eyes faded to normal brown, and in them, Tessa saw a moment of clarity, of relief. Thank you, he whispered with his dying breath. Free at last. He collapsed, the shadow magic that had sustained him evaporating. Around the hall, the remaining rogues suddenly staggered, confusion replacing corruption in their eyes. Some fled. Others simply stopped fighting, looking around as if waking from nightmares. The battle was over. But Tessa's wasn't. The backlash from draining a Shadow Alpha hit her like a physical blow. She collapsed, darkness creeping around the edges of her vision, her body rejecting the traces of corruption she'd absorbed even in her controlled pulling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you. Thane's voice, rough and desperate. He'd shifted back to human form, cradling her against his chest despite his own injuries. I've got you. Don't you dare die on me, Tessa. Don't you dare. Cashin. Tessa managed to gasp out. Safe room. With John. He's safe. I know. I can feel him through the pack bonds. Thane's face was above hers. Pale gold hair matted with blood and sweat, ice blue eyes burning with fear and fury. But what about you? Tessa, stay with me. Focus on my voice. Healers, someone was shouting. Get the healers now. Alara appeared, her weathered face grim as she assessed Tessa's condition. Shadow corruption. She absorbed it when she drained the alpha. We need to purge it before it takes hold. Do it, Thane commanded. Whatever it takes. Alara's hands began to glow, but Tessa could feel it wasn't enough. The corruption was spreading faster than normal healing magic could counter. Wait, Tessa rasped. I can heal myself. Soulweaver gift. Just need. She reached inward, to her own life force, and did something she'd never attempted before. She turned her gift on herself, identifying the threads of shadow corruption and carefully, methodically, unweaving them from her own vitality. It hurt. The moon above it hurt worse than dying. But she could feel it working, the corruption loosening, retreating, finally releasing its hold. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Tessa opened eyes she hadn't realized she'd closed. Thane was still holding her, his face pressed against her hair, his whole body trembling. Around them, guards were securing the hall, tending to wounded, dealing with the few surviving rogues who'd been freed from shadow corruption. It's done, Tessa whispered. I'm okay. The corruption's gone. Thane pulled back just enough to look at her, and the expression on his face, raw relief mixed with fury, made her heart clench. Don't ever do that again, he said, his voice shaking. Don't ever risk yourself like that. I can't, his voice broke. I can't lose you, Tessa. I can't. You won't, Tessa promised, lifting a trembling hand to his face. I'm not going anywhere. I told you, I choose this. I choose you. I choose us. You're insane, Thane said, but he was smiling even as tears tracked through blood and dirt on his face. Absolutely insane. You were supposed to stay in the safe room. I felt you were hurt, Tessa said simply. Did you really think I'd hide while my mate was in danger? Your mate, Thane repeated softly, catching the word. You said it. You've never said it before. I'm saying it now. Tessa pulled him down, kissing him despite the blood and smoke and chaos around them. You're my mate, Thane's Silvercrest. Mine. And I protect what's mine. The kiss deepened, desperate and claiming, until Alara cleared her throat pointedly. As touching as this is, Your Majesty, you're both injured and need proper healing. And there's a terrified 3-year-old in the safe room who needs to see his parents are alive. Parents. The words settled over Tessa like a warm cloak. Cashin, she said immediately, trying to sit up. We need to get to him. Easy, Thane said, supporting her. Can you stand? I can do whatever I need to do, Tessa said firmly. Together, leaning on each other, they made their way back through the damaged palace. Guards bowed as they passed, calling out thanks and blessings. Word had already spread. The Soulweaver had killed the Shadow Alpha and had saved them all. Tessa barely registered it. All she could think about was a small boy waiting in the dark, scared and alone. They reached the safe room to find John pacing like a caged wolf, his face flooding with relief when he saw them. Thank the moon. The prince has been beside himself.
Papa.
Tessa Mama. Cashin came running from the inner chamber, his face streaked with tears. He threw himself at them both, and they caught him together, holding him tight despite their injuries. You came back, Cashin sobbed. You both came back. I was so scared. I thought. Sure, Tessa soothed, stroking his hair. We're here. We're okay. Everything's okay now. The bad men? Cashin asked fearfully. Gone, Thane said firmly. Tessa stopped them. She saved us all. Cashin pulled back to look at Tessa with awe. You're the bravest person ever. Even braver than Papa. I don't know about that, Tessa said, smiling despite her exhaustion. Your Papa is pretty brave himself. You're both brave, Cashin decided. And you're both mine. My family. Forever and ever, right? Thane and Tessa looked at each other over their son's head, understanding passing between them without words. Forever and ever, Tessa promised. Forever and ever, Thane echoed. And as they stood there, bloodied, exhausted, but together, Tessa realized something profound. She'd spent 7 years running from a home she'd lost. But she'd finally found a new one. And this time, she wasn't letting go. Chapter 13. Binding Ceremonies. 3 weeks after the battle, the palace still bore scars. Shattered windows had been replaced, but scorch marks remained on stone walls. The Great Hall's doors were being rebuilt by master craftsmen. And in the infirmary, the last of the wounded were finally being discharged, healed by a combination of traditional healers and Tessa's Soulweaver gift. She'd worked tirelessly those first days after the attack, going from bed to bed, sensing injuries and easing pain. Some wounds were beyond even her gift to fully heal, but she'd done what she could, and the gratitude in people's eyes had been overwhelming. You've earned their loyalty, Thane had told her one evening as they'd walked through the recovery wards together. Not because you're my mate. Because you proved you'd bleed for them. That's what matters to wolves. Action, not words. Now, standing in her suite with Alara fussing over the dress laid out on the bed, Tessa felt the weight of what was coming. The mating ceremony. The formal binding that would make her Luna of the Winterborn Dominion. You don't have to do this if you're not ready, Alara said gently, reading the tension in Tessa's shoulders. The sovereign would wait as long as needed. I know he would, Tessa said quietly. But I don't want to wait. I've spent 7 years being afraid to commit to anything, anyone. And Thane, her voice softened. He's been patient beyond measure. He deserves to know I'm certain. Are you? Alara asked. Certain? Tessa thought about the past weeks. About waking up to find Thane asleep in a chair by her bed after she'd pushed herself too hard healing. About Cashin's laughter when they played in the gardens. About the mate bond that had grown from tentative threads to unbreakable cables of silver light. Yes, she said firmly. I'm certain. He's mine and I'm his, and it's time everyone else knew it too. Alara smiled, the expression making her weathered face almost young. Then let's make you look like the Luna you already are. The dress was beautiful, silver-white silk that matched Tessa's hair, with delicate embroidery that caught the light like moonbeams. It left her shoulders bare, which had worried Tessa initially. Everyone will see the scars from the battle. She'd protested when the seamstress first showed her the design. Good, Thane had said firmly. Let them see. Scars are proof you survived. Proof you fought for this kingdom. There's no shame in that. Now, as Alara helped her into the dress, Tessa studied herself in the mirror. The scars were visible, thin white lines across her shoulder and collarbone where rogue claws had caught her during the battle. But Thane was right. They weren't ugly. They were evidence of strength. You look like moonlight made flesh, Alara said softly. The sovereign is going to lose his mind. A knock at the door interrupted them. Can I come in? Cashin's voice called. Papa said I had to ask permission first because it's a girl's room and girls need privacy, but I really want to see Tessa Mama before the ceremony, please. Despite her nerves, Tessa laughed. Come in, sweetheart. The door burst open and Cashin rushed in, then stopped dead, his ice blue eyes going wide. Wow, he breathed. You look like a princess. No, a queen. Even prettier than the pictures in my books. He was dressed formally, too, a small version of his father's ceremonial attire, with silver embroidery matching Tessa's dress. His pale blonde hair had been neatly combed, though it was already starting to escape in wild tufts. You look very handsome yourself, Tessa said, kneeling down to his level. Very grown up. Papa said I have an important job today, Cashin said seriously. I have to hold the binding cords and not drop them and stand very still even if my legs get tired. And after, I get to call you Mama for real, not just Tessa Mama. Right? Tessa's throat tightened. If you want to. You don't have to if. I want to, Cashin interrupted. I've wanted to forever. I just didn't want to be rude before you and Papa were officially mated. But now you'll be, so I can call you Mama and Papa can kiss you whenever he wants and we'll be a real family. We were already a real family, Tessa said softly, pulling him into a hug. But yes, now it'll be official. Good. Cashin squeezed her tight, then pulled back with a mischievous smile. Papa's really nervous, by the way. He made the servants remake the flower arrangements 3 times. And he keeps checking his hair. It's funny. The sovereign is nervous? Alara asked, amused. Super nervous, Cashin confirmed. He said something about wanting everything perfect for his mate. I told him Tessa Mama, doesn't care about flowers, she cares about people. But he said he wanted both. Tessa felt warmth spread through her chest. Thane, who commanded kingdoms and led armies, was nervous about their mating ceremony. Because he wanted it to be perfect for her. Come on, Alara said, making final adjustments to Tessa's dress. Everyone's waiting. The wild wolves arrived an hour ago and are making the guards very nervous just by existing. The wild wolves came?
Tessa asked, surprised.
Of course they did, Alara said. You're Soulweaver. You killed a shadow alpha and saved the kingdom. They've been guarding the palace perimeter ever since the battle. They wouldn't miss your mating ceremony for anything. The ceremony was being held in the palace gardens, under the open sky, where the moon could witness the binding. As Tessa walked down the path between assembled guests, nobles, guards, servants, representatives from allied packs, she felt hundreds of eyes on her. But the only eyes that mattered were ice blue and blazing with barely controlled emotion. Thane stood at the ceremonial altar, wearing formal sovereignty attire that made him look both regal and dangerous. His pale gold hair caught the setting sun, and when he saw Tessa, his expression cracked, raw love and awe flooding across his features before he controlled it. The mate bond sang between them, silver threads so bright they were almost visible in the dying light. Tessa walked toward him, Cashin holding her hand on one side, Ilara on the other. When they reached the altar, Cashin took his position holding the ceremonial binding cords, silver and gold twisted together, representing the joining of two souls. The pack elder who would officiate stepped forward, a woman ancient beyond counting, with eyes that had seen centuries. "We gather under the moon's witness," she began, her voice carrying across the silent crowd, "to bind two souls chosen by fate but confirmed by choice. Thane Silvercrest, Alpha Sovereign of the Winterborn Dominion, and Tessa Frost, Soulweaver and Savior of the Realm." The titles felt strange on Tessa's ears. Savior of the Realm. She was just a girl who'd refused to let a child die. "Alpha Sovereign," the elder continued, "do you offer yourself freely to this bond? Do you swear to protect, cherish, and stand beside this woman through all trials and triumphs?" "I do," Thane said, his voice strong and certain. "By my blood, by my wolf, by everything I am, she is mine and I am hers." The elder turned to Tessa. "Soulweaver, do you offer yourself freely to this bond? Do you swear to protect, cherish, and stand beside this man through all trials and triumphs?" Tessa took a breath, letting herself feel the weight of the moment. 7 years ago, she'd thought she'd never have this. A mate, a family, a place to call home. "I do," she said clearly. "By my blood, by my wolf, by everything I am, he is mine and I am his." The elder smiled. "Then let the binding commence. Young prince, bring forward the cords." Cashin stepped forward carefully, holding the silver and gold cords as if they were made of glass. Thane and Tessa each took one end, holding them between their clasped hands. "These cords represent your bond," the elder said. "Silver for the moon's blessing, gold for the sun's strength. Together, they are unbreakable. As I bind your hands, so too will your souls be bound." She began wrapping the cords around their joined hands in intricate patterns, speaking ancient words in a language Tessa barely understood. With each wrap, the mate bond grew stronger, brighter, until Tessa could swear she saw actual light emanating from where they touched. "The bond is strong," the elder said with satisfaction. "Now comes the claiming. Alpha Sovereign, mark your mate." This was the part Tessa had been both anticipating and dreading. The claiming bite that would mark her as Thane's mate for all to see, leaving a permanent scar that would show their bond. Thane leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. His lips brushed her neck first, gentle, reverent. Then his teeth, sharp and perfect, bit down on the junction between her neck and shoulder. The pain was brief, sharp, followed immediately by a wave of pleasure so intense Tessa gasped. The mate bond exploded between them, no longer just threads but a solid connection, binding them together in ways that went beyond physical. She could feel him, his love, his relief, his joy, his absolute certainty that she was his, and he would never let her go. When Thane pulled back, blood marked his lips. The wound on Tessa's neck was already healing, leaving a silver crescent moon scar, the mark of a true mate. "Soulweaver," the elder said, "mark your mate." Tessa had never thought of herself as possessive. But looking at Thane, at his exposed throat, at the vulnerability in his eyes, she felt something primal rise in her chest. "Mine," her wolf said.
"Ours."
"Always." She leaned in and bit, her teeth finding the same spot on his neck that he'd claimed on hers. Thane's hands tightened on her waist, a low growl rumbling through his chest that spoke of pleasure and satisfaction. When she pulled back, the matching crescent moon mark appeared on his skin. Claimed.
Bound.
Mated. "By the moon's witness and the pack's blessing," the elder announced, "I declare you bound. Alpha Sovereign and Luna. Sovereign and Soulweaver. Mates for all time." The crowd erupted in howls, wolves in human form throwing their heads back and giving voice to their joy. From the forest beyond the gardens, the wild white wolves joined in, their voices ancient and powerful. Thane pulled Tessa close and kissed her, not gentle or tentative, but claiming and fierce and full of promise. "Mine," he said against her lips. Finally, completely mine. Yours, Tessa agreed. And you're mine. Always have been, Thane said. Since the moment I saw you dying in that forest, I've been yours. A tug on Tessa's dress made them break apart. Cashin was looking up at them with such pure joy it made Tessa's heart ache. Does this mean I can call you Mama now? He asked. For real? Tessa knelt down, pulling him into a hug. For real. If that's what you want. It's what I want most in the whole world, Cashin said, wrapping his small arms around her neck. I love you, Mama. Tears spilled down Tessa's cheeks. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. Thane joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them, and they stayed like that, a family, finally and truly complete, while the pack celebrated around them and the moon rose above to witness their joy. The celebration lasted late into the night. There was music and dancing, food and drink, stories told and retold about the battle and the Soulweaver who'd saved them all. Tessa danced with Thane, with Cashin, with guards and servants who all wanted to congratulate their new Luna. It was overwhelming and wonderful and perfect. Near midnight, Thane leaned close to whisper in her ear. Want to escape? Desperately, Tessa admitted. They slipped away while everyone was distracted by a particularly dramatic retelling of the Shadow Alpha's defeat. Cashin had long since fallen asleep in Alara's arms, exhausted from excitement. Thane led Tessa to his chambers, their chambers now, and closed the door on the world outside. Finally, he said, pulling her close. I've been wanting to do this all night. He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, taking his time now that they weren't on display. Tessa melted into him, feeling the mate bond pulse with contentment. I can't believe this is real, she whispered. A few months ago, I was alone in the forest, ready to die. And now you're home, Thane finished. With a mate who loves you and a son who adores you, and a whole kingdom that owes you their lives. I don't need the kingdom's gratitude, Tessa said. I just need this. You and Cashin. My family. You have us, Thane promised. Forever. Through everything. Good and bad, easy and hard, you have us. They stayed up talking and kissing and simply being together until exhaustion finally claimed them. Tessa fell asleep wrapped in Thane's arms, the mate bond warm and steady in her chest, feeling safer and more content than she'd ever thought possible. She'd spent 7 years running, but finally, she'd found where she was meant to be. Home. Chapter 14. Legacy of Light. 6 months later. Spring had transformed the palace grounds into a riot of color and life. Tessa walked through the healing gardens she'd helped design, checking on the medicinal plants that would supply the infirmary for the coming year. Her hand rested absently on her slightly rounded belly, still small enough that most wouldn't notice, but unmistakable to those who knew. She was pregnant. The discovery had come 2 weeks ago, confirmed by Alara's knowing smile and Thane's expression of absolute wonder. They hadn't told anyone yet except Cashin, who'd promptly declared he was going to be the best big brother in all the territories. Mama. Speaking of Cashin, the boy came running down the garden path, his combat instructor following at a more sedate pace. At nearly 4 years old now, Cashin was growing into his role as crown prince with remarkable grace. He was still sweet and affectionate, but there was a strength developing in him that made Tessa proud. What is it, sweetheart? Tessa asked, catching him as he launched himself at her. Master John says I did perfect on all my forms today, Cashin announced. And he says if I keep practicing, I'll be ready to start learning actual combat by summer. That's wonderful, Tessa said, ruffling his hair. Your papa will be so proud. Where is Papa? Cashin asked, looking around. He said he'd watch my afternoon session. Council meeting, Tessa said. The delegation from the Eastern Pax is still here, but he should be done soon. As if summoned by her words, Tessa felt the mate bond warm. Thane was approaching. Moments later, he emerged from the palace, still wearing his formal sovereignty attire but with his hair slightly mussed in the way that meant he'd been running his hands through it during stressful discussions. How did it go? Tessa asked as he bent to kiss her cheek. Better than expected, Thane said. The Eastern Pacts are agreeing to the new security protocols. After what happened here, everyone's taking the shadow corruption threat more seriously. His expression darkened slightly. We killed the Shadow Alpha, but the corruption itself is still spreading in isolated pockets. The scouts are reporting more rogues turning up with red eyes and dark magic. Then we deal with it, Tessa said firmly.
Together.
Like we deal with everything. Papa, Mama, watch this. Cashin had already run to the training yard visible from the gardens and was demonstrating the forms he'd learned, his small body moving with surprising precision. Thane and Tessa watched, standing close together, Thane's arm around her waist. He's getting good, Thane observed. He takes after his father, Tessa said. Then quieter. Both his fathers, maybe. The one who gave him life and the one who loves him now. Thane's arm tightened around her. They rarely spoke of Sarah, Cashin's birth mother, but Tessa had made sure there were paintings of her throughout the palace and had encouraged Cashin to ask questions about the woman who died to bring him into the world. Sarah would have liked you, Thane said softly. She would have been grateful that Cashin has you. I hope so, Tessa said. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their son, until Tessa felt the familiar flutter in her belly, subtle still, but unmistakable. Did you feel that? She whispered, taking Thane's hand and pressing it to her stomach. Thane's eyes widened. The baby? The baby, Tessa confirmed. First movements. Alara said they'd start around now. The expression on Thane's face, pure wonder and joy, made Tessa's heart swell. He'd been attentive before, but since learning about the pregnancy, he'd become almost absurdly protective, making sure she wasn't overworking herself, insisting she eat properly, hovering whenever she used her Soulweaver gift extensively. It was annoying and endearing in equal measure. Boy or girl? Thane asked, not for the first time. I don't know, Tessa said. Do you want me to try to sense it? No, Thane said immediately. Surprise me? I want to be surprised. You just want to avoid having to commit to painting the nursery, Tessa teased. That too, Thane admitted with a grin. A commotion at the palace gates interrupted the moment. Tessa's Soulweaver senses flared. She could feel fear and pain approaching rapidly. Something's wrong, she said, already moving toward the gates. A horse thundered through, its rider slumped over the saddle, clearly injured. Guards rushed to help, carefully lowering the rider. A young woman in scouting leathers, her face pale with blood loss and exhaustion. Message for the sovereign. She gasped as Tessa and Thane arrived. Urgent. The Western Territories, shadow corruption has appeared in the capital city. Not just rogues, citizens are turning. Children are, she coughed, blood flecking her lips. Please. They need help. They need the Soulweaver. Tessa's gift was already reaching out, sensing the woman's injuries. A deep wound in her side, probably from claws, and exhaustion from riding for days without proper rest. I've got you, Tessa said, placing her hands on the woman's side. Her Soulweaver magic flowed outward, knitting torn tissue, easing pain, restoring vitality from her own abundant reserves. The pregnancy made her life force stronger, more easily replenished. She could give more without draining herself dangerously. The woman gasped as the healing took effect, color returning to her face. Better?
Tessa asked.
Much better, Luna, the woman said with awe. Thank you. Thane was already issuing commands. Get her food and water. I want all available information about the Western Territories on my desk within the hour. And send word to the healers. Tell them to prepare for a possible journey. He turned to Tessa, and she saw the question in his eyes before he spoke it. No, she said immediately. Don't even ask. I'm not staying here while you go into danger. You're pregnant, Thane said, keeping his voice low so only she could hear. I'm not risking you and our child. The Western Territories need a Soulweaver, Tessa countered. I'm the only one who can purge shadow corruption from living hosts. You saw what I did to the Shadow Alpha. I can do the same for citizens who've been infected, but only if I'm there. You need me, Thane. I need you safe, Thane said, his voice rough with emotion. And I need to help people who are suffering, Tessa said firmly. That's what Soulweavers do. That's what I do. We're partners, Thane. We face things together. They stared at each other for a long moment, the mate bond crackling between them with conflicting emotions, his fear and protectiveness warring with her determination and sense of duty. I'll be careful, Tessa said more gently. I won't take unnecessary risks. But I'm not hiding in the palace while people die from something I might be able to stop. Thane closed his eyes, clearly fighting an internal battle. When he opened them again, resignation and pride mixed in his expression. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met, he said. You love that about me, Tessa countered. I do, Thane admitted. Frustratingly, I really do. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. But if anything happens to you or our child, I will burn the world down. Nothing's going to happen, Tessa promised. We're going to help those people, stop the corruption, and come home. Together. As a family. As a family, Thane echoed. They told Cashin that evening, explaining that they'd be traveling to the Western Territories to help people who were sick. Can I come? Cashin asked immediately. Not this time, Thane said gently. We need you to stay here and help Master Aldrich with his research. He's trying to find out where the shadow corruption is coming from, and you're the best at finding things in the library. It was a blatant bit of flattery to make Cashin feel important, but the boy brightened immediately. I'll find everything, he declared. And I'll take care of the palace while you're gone. Like a proper prince. Exactly like a proper prince, Tessa agreed, hugging him tight. We'll be back before you know it. But as they prepared for the journey, gathering healers, guards, supplies, Tessa couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something about this felt different from the attack on the palace. Bigger. More coordinated. The shadow corruption was spreading faster than they'd realized. And somewhere something or someone was directing it. The night before they left, Tessa stood in the nursery they'd begun preparing. It was still mostly empty, waiting for them to know whether to paint it blue or pink or the neutral green Thane had suggested. We'll finish it when we get back, Thane said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist, his hands resting on her belly. Together. We'll paint walls and build furniture and argue about which toys are appropriate for a royal child. That sounds perfect, Tessa said, leaning back against him. I love you, Thane said quietly. You know that, right? Not because fate chose you or because you saved my son or because you're carrying my child, but because you're you. Because you're brave and kind and stubborn and everything I didn't know I needed. I love you too, Tessa said, turning in his arms. You gave me a home when I thought I'd never have one. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to stop running and start living. They kissed, slow and deep, the mate bond humming with contentment between them. Let's go save the Western Territories, Tessa said when they finally broke apart. And then let's come home and finish building our life together. Deal, Thane agreed. The next morning, they rode out at dawn, a party of 20 including Thane, Tessa, Alara, guards, and healers. Behind them, Cashin stood on the palace steps with Master Aldrich, waving until they disappeared from sight. And ahead of them, in the Western Territories, shadow corruption was spreading. But Tessa had learned something important these past months. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a mate, a son, a pack, and a gift that could change the world. Whatever darkness waited in the West, they would face it together. And together they would win. Because that's what families did. They protected each other. They fought for each other. They loved each other through everything. And Tessa Silvercrest, Luna of the Winterborn Dominion and Soulweaver of Legend, was done running from darkness. It was time to bring the light. 20 years later, the memorial garden was quiet in the afternoon sun. Cashin Silvercrest, now 23 and newly crowned Alpha Sovereign after his father's retirement, walked the familiar paths with his younger sister at his side. Lyra was 18, with her mother's silver-white hair and her father's ice-blue eyes, and she'd just awakened her own Soulweaver gift the previous year. She was learning to control it, to use it to heal rather than harm, guided by their mother's patient teaching. Do you remember the stories Mama used to tell us? Lyra asked as they stopped at the memorial stone dedicated to those who'd fallen in the battle against shadow corruption 20 years ago. About how she saved Papa and became Luna? I remember all of them, Cashin said with a slight smile. She told them every time you asked, which was constantly. They're good stories, Lyra defended. About sacrifice and love and choosing family. They are good stories, Cashin agreed. And they're all true. Mama really did fight 3 rogues to save me. Really did awaken Soulweaver magic that had been dead for centuries. Really did choose to stay when she could have run. And Papa really did fall in love with a ghost girl who looked like she'd break in a strong wind, but turned out to be stronger than anyone realized, Lyra added. Exactly. They stood in comfortable silence, remembering. Their parents had retired to a cottage in the mountains 3 years ago, leaving Cashin to rule with their blessing and support. They still visited often, still offered advice when asked, but they'd earned their peace. Do you think I'll find a mate like they found each other? Lyra asked quietly. Someone who sees past the silver hair and the strange magic? I think, Cashin said, putting an arm around his sister's shoulders, that you'll find exactly what you need when you need it.
Just like Mama did.
Just like we all do, if we're brave enough to stop running and start living. Wise words, brother, Lyra said with a grin. You sound like a sovereign. I learned from the best, Cashin said. As they walked back toward the palace, Cashin thought about the legacy his parents had built. Not just a kingdom made stronger through their leadership, but a family built on choice and love and determination to protect what mattered. His mother had started as nobody, a ghost girl with no pack and no future. But she'd become everything. A healer, a warrior, a Luna, a mother. And most importantly, she'd become exactly who she was meant to be. Because she'd chosen to stop running. Because she'd chosen to fight for what she loved. Because she'd chosen family over fear. And that, Cashin thought, was the greatest legacy of all.
The end.
Thank you for joining us on Tessa and Thane's journey. This has been the Soulweaver's Choice here on Wolf Heart Tales. If you enjoyed this story of sacrifice, destiny, and found family, please give us a howl by liking and subscribing to the channel. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought of Tessa's transformation from wandering healer to powerful Luna, and let us know what kind of werewolf stories you'd like to hear next. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more tales from the world of wolves and magic. Until next time, may the moon light your path.